ladies and gentlemen, we are thrilled to have you here for this epic debate, as we have a very special one today. You could say the Super Bowl of modern day debate. And by the way, Modern Day Debate is a nonpartisan channel as we attempt to host debates on science, religion, and politics in the fairest way possible. So hold us accountable, folks. And with that, very excited to let you know we have a special one today as we welcome all four of our guests. Want to say thanks, Eric Stryker and Alsup, regular buddies. Thanks so much for being here, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Okay, absolutely. And Vaush and Destiny, setting things aside and partnering for this unique event. Thank you both, Vaush and Destiny, for being here today.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Just buddies. Happy to have you. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. And with that, want to let you know, folks, I have linked all four of the speakers in the description. So if you'd like to hear more, you can hear more. And also want to let you know, for today, it's a fairly flexible format. So we're going to have roughly 12 minutes split by each team. And after that, we'll have open conversation for 60 minutes, followed by about 30 minutes of Q&A. Because we do want to let these guys get to sleep by a decent time, I am sorry to say that because we probably will have a lot of super chats tonight, super chat at your own risk. I'm sorry to say that, but we probably almost certainly won't get to all of them. And some of them, you could say we're going to be kind of picky with looking for the best questions we can. And just to give you that heads up front. So with that, want to let you know, we're very excited as Eric and Alsup, or I should say Eric and James will be kicking it off first. And they're going to have, as I mentioned, that split opening, and then we're going to have open conversation, closings, and Q&A. If you have a question, fire it into the old live chat. And if you tag me with @ModernDayDebate, it makes it easier for me to see it. And Super Chats will push your question to the top of the list for the Q&A. With that, thank you so much. The floor is all yours, Eric and James.
Yeah, well, thanks for that great introduction, and thanks for having us again. Race
2
is...
seconds. So sorry. This is my mistake. This is really special. Forgive me for doing this. I forgot to mention, we have a very special video. Someone wanted to wish the debaters luck. And so I do want to show this. My mistake. I jumped the gun there. I'm very excited for this one, but I do have to show this because it's a face you may recognize. So let me just show this clip for all of our speakers. Thank you. And another welcome from a special guest. With that, want to say thanks so much, Hunter, for that wish of good luck for all four of the speakers. And with that, we will kick it over, as said, to Eric and James. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, always good to see from Hunter Avalon. I think I can speak for all four of us when I say definitely our favorite YouTuber. But yeah, race is probably the most pertinent discussion we could be having right now. One of the most pertinent discussions, with cities on fire, white monuments being toppled, white people being attacked in the streets for defending said monuments and being criminally charged for defending themselves. But what's been made clear in America over the past few weeks, especially, this is something that's been playing out since the country's founding, of course, but what's been made especially clear as of late is that diversity is not working. Diversity is a failed experiment. Racial egalitarianism is a failed experiment. And it's not working for whites who are being disenfranchised, we're being subjected to physical violence, over-policed, pushed out of positions of power, whiteness being effectively criminalized in many ways, the right of whites to self-defense effectively being criminalized in many ways. But it's not working for blacks either. And to say that it's working 100% for one group or the other, it's not true. I mean, there are some legitimate grievances, and we can quibble with the particulars of these. But blacks that feel that they rightly feel that the system, despite everything it's giving them in terms of advancement, affirmative action programs, so on and so forth, it isn't for them. It feels alien. They don't like being governed under a system that they correctly identify as being of European origin. So nobody's really getting what they want from this. The only interest being served from diversity is from forcing these largely incompatible groups together. The only interest being served is that of global capital, that of the elites. This is making class solidarity impossible. Diversity is being used effectively as a wrecking ball to destroy the last vestiges of normal, healthy American society. That is part of the case we're going to make today. We are going to, of course, talk about crime and race and crime, the causes of crime, and and all of the above. But that is, I think, the general meta point that people need to take home is that diversity is not working for blacks. It is not working for whites. The only interest being served is that of global capital. And with that, I'll hand it over to Eric Stryker.
Okay, great to be here, everyone. Let me start off by expressing disappointment in the fact that instead of having a conversation about race with two blacks, we're having a conversation about it with two white men who have appointed themselves spokesmen of the black race. What does the average black man on the street even think of two gay white liberals deciding the fate of their communities for them? According to Vaush, we wanted to debate blacks because black people are dumb, and it would be an easy win for us. But I've had incredibly fruitful conversations with various members of the black community, from Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney to members of the Nation of Islam, the Black Hoteps. What was remarkable about all these conversations is that I saw almost eye to eye with them on everything. One important view I share with black leaders, from Muhammad Ali to Malcolm X to Louis Farrakhan, even Van Jones, is the hatred of you disingenuous white liberal scum. As Van Jones said, the white liberal is a bigger enemy to the black race than any Klansman. Muhammad Ali mocked a British TV announcer as a self-hating weirdo in an interview because he said he wanted the races to mix. Malcolm X accurately stated that Jews and liberals are cynics who pretend to be friends of the Negro in order to use them to increase their own power. I can find videos of Malcolm X praising George Lincoln Rockwell. Can you name any black who has ever said anything good about a white liberal? Sure, they'll fleece them for money, but blacks love the treason and hate the white traitor. Good for them. The only systematic racism in America is against white people. In today's America, between 1 in 5 and 1 in 4 blacks, a significant overrepresentation works for the public sector, a place that provides reliable middle-class jobs with health care, paid vacations, and other benefits. Public sector workers are unionized at a rate of 35% compared to private sector unions, which are 6%. The typical public sector worker gets 22% higher wages than their private sector equivalents. On the other hand, white people are 77% of minimum wage employees, another massive overrepresentation. These are the shitty jobs with no health care, no labor rights, and always dead ends. White overrepresentation among the working people is by design. A study released last year in the Journal of Experimental Psychology by Aaron Cooley found that when people are given white privilege training, they're far less likely to empathize with the white working poor, while their sympathies increase for blacks. Is it any wonder why fake socialists who promote white privilege bullshit like Vaush love to make fun of rednecks and hicks for their low status? Is it any wonder why all the bankers and capitalists are promoting white privilege bullshit? This is an ideology for oppressing white workers. It's no surprise that once again, capitalist Goldman Sachs simp Destiny and communist Vaush are fighting on the same side against the white working people and the West. James and I will proudly take a stand for our folk and for the pride of European civilization. As for the police, I got no love for the blue. I remember Daniel Shaver being executed as he pled for his life. No fucking congressional hearings there. I remember that murdering pig is walking the streets drawing a taxpayer-funded pension. I remember Jeremy Martis, a 6-year-old boy shot to death by 2 fucking black pigs. One of them is now free. It later came out that one of the black men that shot this little boy targeted his father for assassination because he wanted to fuck his wife. So give me a goddamn break about this systematic racist bullshit. The entire system is anti-white. That's my piece.
Okay. Destiny, do you mind if I go first?
Yeah, knock yourself out.
Yeah. All right, well, that was a fantastic piece of performance art. I would like to remind the two people I am debating that the subject we are debating is, in fact, racism in the criminal justice system. The statement we were asked to provide was this: all else equal, African-American people are treated worse by the criminal justice system for no discernible reasons not directly, or at least indirectly, influenced by racism or race-based policies. And I had wondered, coming into this, with the totality of evidence on our side, what approach you would take towards rebutting those arguments. And it is clear to me now that theater as I had anticipated, is indeed the approach you will be taking, because you did not say shit about the actual subject of discussion. Instead, it was the same vague, performative, conspiratorial nonsense you could read off any poll post. So let me actually bring some data into this conversation. The evidence in favor of the idea that black people are discriminated against in the criminal justice system is overwhelming. It is uniformly reified not only by private academics, but also by government institutions, from the FBI to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, that in every level of our criminal justice system, black people are treated disproportionately poorly. And to that, the common response is this: well, black people may get shafted in this way and that way. However, they do more crime. So, in all actuality, they're being treated fairly. No. These studies account for every conceivable socioeconomic confound that is typically used as a means of obfuscating the truth of the matter. We have evidence that black people are, with all other factors apart from race meaningfully accounted for, infinitely more likely to be stopped by stop and frisk procedures, more likely to be stopped by police while driving, more likely to be hit with harsher sentences, particularly with regards to mandatory minimums, more likely to be sentenced to the death penalty. I mean, I could read out all of the studies I'm looking at right now, but I imagine we'll have time to go through them one by one. That is the subject I am interested in discussing, not some vague conspiratorial bullshit over whether or not people taking down statues of Confederates means this country is anti-white. And to you, Destiny.
Yeah, wow, I didn't know we were doing theater intros to this, but I would like to point out that I think it's very funny that on one end we have Alsup, who is saying diversity is not working for the country that is literally the head of the world right now, both economically and militarily. And then another guy who has deluded himself into thinking he's European, I guess. But yeah, I mean, narrowing the focus of this conversation onto the criminal justice system and focusing how blacks are disproportionately impacted by said criminal justice system is the reason why me and Vaush are here today. I hope that we don't spend the majority of this debate pandering to these random, stupid talking points about how blacks are different in some other area that's completely, totally unrelated to this discussion.
You got it. And with that, we will go into the open discussion. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And I'll be, just to let you know up front, I'll probably be more active just because I expect this might be a little bit wild, but the floor is all yours.
I'm feeling
Sure.
calm.
Well, I'd like to begin by addressing this idea that there is a multitude of studies showing that blacks are, as Vaush put it, infinitely more likely to be stopped and frisked, which, of course, begs the question, well, why would that be? Is this just the predilections of racist police officers that are stopping and frisking blacks for no reason other than evil white racism? Or is there a factual basis for why some groups may be more likely to commit crimes, thus more appropriate targets for a stop and frisk policy, for example?
Let me add something to that, too. Under Mayor Bloomberg, whites were twice as likely to be stopped and frisked as proportional to the violent crime they commit. Blacks are wildly overrepresented in all crimes in New York City, and yet whites were twice as likely under Bloomberg. Bloomberg laughed about this on the radio, by the way. And that was specifically done to create an equalist outcome.
Right. And so it's one thing to say, to compare the percentage of the population to the percentage of those that are stopped and frisked, but you can look at actually those that are arrested and convicted of murder, and the rate of stop and frisk for people such as that, or for blacks in that case, the rate of blacks arrested for murder versus the rate at which they are stopped and frisked. And it is disproportionately against whites. Whites are disproportionately stopped relative to the percent of violent crimes they commit. I'd like to begin, if we're going to talk about studies, we can talk about a study from Washington State University.
We don't have too many points.
Yeah,
can we do these one at a time? I'd like to,
let's,
because I know that the goal is to like put out as much stupid shit as possible. The first thing that you brought up, the idea that like, so a common tactic is to say like weasel words, like, well, blacks commit way more crime than whites, and then you know, whites don't commit as much crime as like, instead of actually like looking at the actual figures. So, for instance, if we were to say that like there is a good reason for black people to be pulled over more than white people, then you would expect to see that those pullovers are actually like accomplishing the goal of like finding more crime. This just doesn't seem to be the case though. So, for instance, an analysis of 4.5 million traffic stops in North Carolina shows that black and Latino drivers are more likely to be searched than whites, okay, given the population. However, despite that, there are still more profitable searches turning up white motorists having contraband. And then this study has been repeated in Nashville as well, where even if you look at the amount of stops, even if you look at the fact that, well, they commit more crime, whatever the fuck that means, when you actually analyze, like, well, how likely are they to turn up contraband or to catch somebody for a crime, they actually aren't being able to justify these stops with these numbers. It's one of the reasons why stop and frisk has been phased out so largely in New York. It's just not good policing. Even if we throw all the social justice, whatever aside, and all the feel good or whatever, if we just look at the raw data, stop and frisk is just not a good way to catch crime. And then this idea that you can say, well, maybe there's a reason, maybe it's because they think they're more likely to commit blah blah blah. What you're doing is you're justifying racism. You're basically saying, well, maybe
I got the
it's more black.
2019 studies here for the crime rate. 93%
we're not talking
of all
about
murders
crime
in
rate.
New York City.
with what we're talking about.
93% of all murders in New York City were committed by blacks.
This is you're getting excited, Stryker. That has nothing to do with what we're talking
86% of
about.
rapes were committed by blacks and people call
Okay, forgive me for doing this. I hate doing this so early. I got you all on mute. Forgive me for doing this so early. But just we come back to you, I promise, Stryker, but just because there were a lot of points that I know Destiny wants to get a chance to address as many as possible, promise we'll come back to you, but want to kick it back to Destiny.
Yeah, okay. He'll use his European data to catch back up, I'm sure, or his European DNA. So the thing that I'm trying to focus on is that the idea that even if black people do commit more crime, that doesn't justify the increased number of stops. We can hide behind this idea that black people commit more crime all day. Neither me nor Vaush are going to dispute that. That's obviously true, but that's not a slam dunk. The point is whether or not the total amount of like extra stops that black people receive compared to white people can be justified based on the extra amount of crime they do, and that's just not borne out anywhere. Again, we can always talk about the high crime that blacks commit or whatever, but it just doesn't explain the massive disproportionate amount of stops that black people receive compared to white people, and they don't have the numbers to justify it.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. It's very often the prerogative of these types to just, no matter what evidence you present to them, they lean back in their chair, put their finger to their chin, and say, well, 1350. We understand that there is a disproportionate rate of criminality between the races here in this country. What we are arguing is that the judicial response, the criminal justice system's response to this imbalance, is disproportionate to the extent of constituting racial bias. If the bias is not explained by the crime statistics, then those biases are unjustified and therefore, by definition, racial biases of the system, hence systemic racial bias.
We can kick it. I think, Eric, you had a point you wanted to get to.
Yeah, well, if 96% of shootings in New York City are committed by blacks and Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, it actually makes absolute sense to check more of those people for guns. I mean, it's just common sense. Furthermore, you don't interact at all with the fact that whites, who, again, are marginal in the terms of representation in crime in New York City, are twice as likely, because in comparison to their crime rate, 2 times as likely, Bloomberg said this, he admitted this when he was mayor, to be stopped and frisked, just so that they can even out the numbers. So if there's any institutional racism there, it's against whites.
Yeah, and you could even argue that the problem with stop and frisk was that it wasn't stopping enough black people and enough Hispanics and Dominicans, et cetera. Because if you're looking to catch people with illegal guns in New York City and you have 96% of shootings being committed by blacks and Dominicans and others, then it bears to reason then that an appropriate response from the criminal justice system would be to 96% of people selected for random stops would be those that are doing the shooting. But moreover, we can understand why blacks might feel uncomfortable with that. Why, these are uncomfortable realities for African Americans to experience, that they are more likely to perhaps have police encounters because they're committing more crime. They're more likely to be sentenced more harshly because they're more likely to have prior convictions, right? So all of these things lead to them feeling uncomfortable. That said, this is a system, a criminal justice system that was created by people of European descent, by white Americans, to police white Americans.
I just found their North Carolina study, just real quick. I found their North Carolina study, and it did say that the contraband difference was 32% on whites, 29% for blacks. What that study didn't include, of course, typical dishonesty, is that the blacks had warrants and the searches there are mandatory.
Right,
So
and that's the other thing is when you talk about these studies, if you know about how these work, what will happen is
a lot of points. So just
can I just
give you a heads up.
Address the stops? Just one piece of fact about that, and it's not a new point. But when a police officer engages in a stop, they will run the license plate, and what happens then is dispatch will tell them who the driver is, who the registered owner is, and whether or not they have warrants. In many cases, this then necessitates an arrest if there's an outstanding warrant. And we know that what is the number? Like one in five Black men will spend time in prison in this country. Blacks tend to have more warrants than whites do. So thus, you would expect to see a higher rate of stop and a higher rate of search. Maybe not as much contraband, but even then, 3% difference, we're within the margin of error.
Because they
Let's
skip
kick it
court.
back over. Let's kick it back over just because there's a lot of points. Just
Yeah,
for
a
everybody
lot,
to keep.
and very few of them are relevant. So first of all, I took a look at the 2019 New York City shootings by race statistics that you just cited, and it seems like from what I'm looking at, the arrest rates correspond proportionally, almost exactly, to the rate of victim and suspect, meaning that at least in the case of shootings in this city during this year, there seems to be a relatively proportional rate of arrest to crimes committed. I don't know how exactly this is evidence of some sort of anti-white bias. In fact, I don't know how this is relevant at all to what we were talking about. But yeah, additionally, with regards to the pullover study that you just looked at, you accused us of dishonesty for not mentioning the fact that warrants were a part. Of course, warrants are a part of decision making with regards to searching vehicles that are pulled over. But the fact that there are more warrants proportionally on Black people is in support of our argument, because less Black people proportionally had contraband in their cars, meaning that even with the distortion that you allege, by the way, I don't know if you're aware of the extent to which that actually influenced the available data, there was still a disproportionate rate of searches to contraband found. Destiny, was there anything in particular you wanted to jump to?
Yeah, I guess one of the really disappointing things about these conversations, and I already see where it's going to go, is that typically if you don't have an actual like data set to back up your argument, we start like reaching to random data. So for instance, for the specific question of, and it's funny because you're even centering on New York City, like this is your slam dunk argument. So what I would expect to see from you guys if stop and frisk was effective is some sort of data showing that, oh, well, once police implemented stop and frisk, either number of violent homicides by firearm decreased, or once they implemented stop and frisk, they were able to procure far more firearms than were before. There's a reason why you guys don't have that data. It's because you know this is a bullshit argument. You know, you can vaguely mention the crime rates of Black people in New York City, but that's not really supporting any argument whatsoever. If you want to defend stop and frisk, I mean, I would love to see some data that points to stop and frisk being a good program. You know, initially I was more sympathetic towards it because, yeah, Black people commit more crime. Maybe it makes more sense to pull them over in some areas. But one of the big reasons why stop and frisk just kind of fell out of favor is because it just didn't work that well. It just didn't really turn up that many more firearms in New York City.
Well, one very important point I need to make about the warrants and people being pulled over is when someone is pulled over and they have a warrant, this will necessitate an arrest. In almost every case, this will necessitate an arrest, which then necessitates a search. So let's say we have two examples, right? We have a Black person being pulled over who has a warrant and a white person being pulled over whose car smells of marijuana. Now, the white person who's being pulled over whose car smells of marijuana, this will be a reason for a search. A police officer will search their vehicle, and then contraband will turn up. Now, every Black person with a warrant is not driving around with contraband. So the idea that they're being arrested for the contraband, this is a misrepresentation of the data. Now, again, it actually is shocking that 29% of searches of Black drivers turned up contraband, because many of these were not predicated. The probable cause for the search was not identifiable smell of drugs or visible drug paraphernalia. These are all probable causes. These were warrants.
Do you have any do you have any data on how many of those searches were initiated by warrants?
Do you?
No, I don't. But I'm not making the claim.
No, but we do have the data available that there are more outstanding warrants, or there's a disproportionate amount of outstanding warrants for
Blacks
African Americans than for whites.
I'm sorry, regarding this data set, did you just imagine a correlative factor that you imagine disproves the data, or do you actually have any evidence?
Are you really going to say that in North Carolina there's not a disproportionate amount of Blacks?
Let me check Destiny over here, because Destiny just straight up lied.
Oh.
Lied about stop and frisk. Like, this is what he does.
What did I straight up lie about?
Confidently lies. So we got the data here from New York City. The homicide rate before stop and frisk. Homicide rate was 31 per 100,000 in 1991. After Giuliani implemented broken windows policing and stop and frisk. I mean, this is something that everyone knows that New York used to be more dangerous.
I love the fact that you're citing the highest crime rate in U.S. history in 91.
Mute him, James. Mute him, James.
We'll come right back to you, Destiny.
Mute him, because he always does this when he's losing.
Hey,
so
don't be so mad, okay?
I promise we'll come right back to you, Destiny and Vaush.
Here's the 1991, 31 homicides per 100,000. 2013, that was Bloomberg's last year's mayor with stop and frisk, 3.3 per 100,000 homicides. Okay, that's a massive drop. Okay, from fucking 31 homicides per 100,000 to 3.3 per 100,000. That's post and after. That's before and after stop and frisk. So you just lie.
Do you have evidence that's because of broken windows policing policy, or does that correlate to a general downward trend of violent crime across the country?
Well, no, yeah, even across the world. Like the 90s were the most violent point in all of U.S. history. Like I could literally point to any spurious correlation that I want and say, well, the reason actually was because I was born in 88 and I was like the savior of the U.S. and everybody looked to me and stopped committing violent crime. You know, you can see 3 years after my birth that happened.
You notice how the older I get, the less violent crime there is in America? I don't know. I think I'm starting to have an influence.
Correlation that we should be concerned about?
Yeah, we can be silly, or we can look at the nationwide rate decrease in crime. And I think the nationwide decrease in crime, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this was around 30% or a 30 to 40% drop in violent crime nationwide, which is superseded by that 90% drop that Stryker just pointed out. So yeah, we do have evidence here.
So you're looking at an outlier. 1991 New York City was literally like, have you seen Escape from New York?
That's
like
what
Snake
Destiny
Plissken?
questioned me on. That's what Destiny.
Yeah, but that's
actually,
he was talking about evidence for broken windows policing in
Did the homicide rate
general.
in New York City drop? The answer is yes.
Nobody contested that it
Stop and
dropped.
frisk. Wait, have you done research for any conversation ever?
Nationwide falls in crime is frankly the criminal justice bill that's always talked about. You know, Trump is always attacking Biden for supporting the criminal justice bill, where Hillary Clinton and the Democrats called blacks predators and so on. They basically just put all these black people in prison. That's why the crime rate went down.
We're pivoting a little bit here.
You want to let them out, okay? That's another reason why the crime rate nationwide went down. Okay, they just put all black people in prison.
Slight pivot.
Okay? Yeah, there you go. Anyway.
Yeah, so as we were saying, New York City in 1991 was about as much of an outlier as you can possibly get when it comes to the murder rate in this country. So to take that one specific country and then all of the dozens and dozens of policies that it's implemented over the past few decades to mitigate that crime rate and go like, oh, well, broken windows policing, in spite of the fact that there was a gigantic nationwide drop in violent crime, and broken windows policing has been implemented in other countries, and in other cities, and has not been found to have those same positive effects, really doesn't speak to the strength of your argument right there. I would argue that New York City was in a uniquely bad place, and it fixed itself in a number of ways. Some of those ways were more effective than others.
And none of those ways, just because you're saying so, involved stop and frisk or broken windows policing. All right.
None of it had anything to do. The fall in crime in New York City had nothing to do with the police or a change in police tactics. That's what they're saying.
No, wait. I'm sorry.
You should demonstrate that. Demonstrate that.
Can somebody here find that clip?
We can. If I can finish this, we can demonstrate and look to the nationwide decrease in violent crime compared to New York's decrease in violent crime. What was happening nationwide? There was no nationwide stop and frisk. What was New York doing? They were taking violent crime very seriously. They were profiling relatively accurately, those that were likely to commit the violent crime. And so the crime rate went down. The homicide rate went down. I don't know. And you're saying that New York fixed itself. I mean, come on. You want to demand evidence for, do we have evidence for stop and frisk having any effect? Well, this is one of the most preeminent policies pursued in New York, and it led to a decrease in violent crime that beat the national average. So that seems to be compelling evidence right there.
Right. Well,
if it was, then you should have a study for it.
Oh,
like that's so easy. Like if you're gonna say that, like, oh, well, stop and frisk definitely led to a decrease in violent crime. Why are you comparing?
No, stats for you in the chat.
I mean, hold on. So let's hear from Destiny.
Yeah. So we're past freshman level of high school in terms of arguing. You can just throw a stat out, right? Like generally, when people do studies, they will do a comprehensive analysis of all the tactics implemented by a certain department. They might go county by county. They might have control cities that they'll compare New York City to look at a variety of different policies to see how they impacted the crime. Not just like, well, here's one stat and it went down, dummy. I'm right. Like, come on. Like, this this is the easiest part of the conversation.
Literally correlation, causation, conflation right here. But I found a study. I'll help you out a little bit. So here's a study on factors which can be attributed to the decrease in crime over the 1990s. And there's a segment for factors which do not seem to decrease to the criminal rate in this country, entitled Better Policing Strategies. It ends with, thus, while the impact of policing strategies on crime is an issue in which reasonable people might disagree on given the lack of hard evidence, my reading of the limited data that are available leads me to the conclusion that the impact of policing strategies on New York City are exaggerated and that the impact on national crime is likely to be minor. So this is a meta-analysis of existing studies that are done on the decrease in crime over the 1990s. I can link it in chat if you'd like.
Yeah, I really enjoy this this bit of like freshman level going on JSTOR and like finding
better than having no data. Also,
we do have the data. No,
one sec.
The crime rate went down.
The idea that
ridiculous.
the crime went down. We have a multitude of statistics which we've presented, and then to say, oh well, no, because that's not on JSTOR. So well,
Also,
actually,
you have stats, not analysis.
Well,
There's a
hold on a
difference.
second.
Stats out of context mean nothing.
Let me get in on
Come
here.
right back to you.
Listen, the murder rates in places like Baltimore and St. Louis and places that don't have New York City style stop and frisk, the murder rates there are atrocious. Chicago, the south side of Chicago, places like that. So there's a massive gulf. Are you going to literally deny
Do you have any data
that
on
New York
this?
City? New York City is the most safe, one of the most safe big cities in America, if not the safest. This is common knowledge. It's Sunday after Saturday style common knowledge. And if we have to sit here and debate that, then it's just ridiculous. The crime, the homicide rate went down drastically after stop and frisk. But let's pretend for a second. Because what I was really, the reason I wanted to talk to black people instead of two disingenuous white liberals.
Can we get to the
is that
relevant
we
points?
can-
Yeah,
we
can we
can-
actually
James,
hurry
can
up?
we not do this? I don't want to.
We can. No, I'm going to fucking do it.
He's gonna do it.
The reason why is that I want to talk
It's
solutions.
calming for him.
Because I'm willing to accept that black people may perceive that a white cop or a white judge or a white jury may discriminate against them. And you know what? There might be cases like that. I'm not saying there's not. The point is, what I'm saying is, what is the solution to that? Now,
Are you conceding the
solution-
argument?
excuse me?
That's cool.
no.
So you agree that there is criminal justice
What he's saying
bias
is there
against-
may be a perception.
No,
This is what I
no,
said in the
I'm-
opening. Is that there may
I'm
be a
speaking-
perception among blacks. There may be a perception
Yes.
among blacks. They're
Ah,
being treated unfairly
Right.
because they look at a white judge and they look at a white prosecutor and say, well, 1 + 1 = 2. That I'm going to jail not because I smothered that toddler like Reese Bowman was this 8-month-old who was smothered by a
you
black
make
caretaker.
fun of that line of
let
thought.
me-
Wait, you
let
make
me-
fun of
let me
that line of thought,
finish.
but that's
No one's
unironically
making
what you're
fun.
doing.
Well, let's
Let
get
me-
back to the main point.
Yeah,
and
can,
then
can I
we'll go back.
finish the sentence?
Yeah, about black
Is-
people.
Right, is that they may have a perception they're being treated unfairly, but that's not the case. So the problem that presents itself to us is how do we address this nationwide problem where 15% of the population or so feels like they can never get a fair shake in the system? Can we even build a system where everyone is governed by the same laws and criminal justice system? What Stryker and I will argue is that that diversity and integration is not working because you will always have these perceptions of unfairness as wrong as they may be, statistically wrong as they may be. So what do we do with that?
Well,
Okay,
the
so
first thing
that-
we have to do is real quick. I'm sorry, just real
Go
quick. Then
for
you go. The first thing we have to do is we have to figure out the first step to solving any problem that you learn at any stage in your life is to identify the problem. So if they have a perception that they're being untreated or that they're being treated unfairly, but they're not actually being treated unfairly, well, then the solution is going to be a hell of a lot different than if they are actually being treated unfairly. So I don't know why we're trying to skip over that part of determining descriptively whether they are or are not being treated unfairly. I think that's really important before we move on to some weird conversation about black people not being able to live alongside white people or something. I think it's good to identify whether or not they are being treated unfairly first. So just curious. So if we're just going to do the stats game or whatever, because we don't actually know the difference between citing one or two numbers versus an actual study done by educated people in the field, I've linked something in the Zoom group chat. So you can see that the biggest fall or decline in murder rate, right, after 2009 is actually coinciding with a huge fall in stop and frisk. And that the massive rise in stop and frisk from the early 2000s didn't really seem like it was correlated with the decrease in violent crime. Can you explain here, if stop and frisk is supposed to be lowering violent crime, why these numbers would be like anti-corollary like this?
Yes.
Oh, I'd like
I
to
can.
add to that really quickly, if I may. And it would be very much appreciated if you would actually stick to the point and not go to this weird ancillary conspiracy bullshit about white civilization. I don't know why you're making fun of your perceived belief of how black people perceive the criminal justice system. You're making fun of them for what you consider to be an intuitive judgment when all you've been giving us is intuitive judgment. Well, look at Baltimore.
Thank you for
Look at-
clarifying the black point of view.
Look
Vaush.
at these cities. There's crime there. There's black people. What more do you need to know? It's common sense. It's not surprising to me that you balk when provided actual studies from actual people who actually have the education to analyze
I can
data and come to
explain
conclusions.
the drop in crime rate in New York City. I can explain that. Can I explain it?
Explain
Okay.
the data that was just provided to you by
I'm
Destiny.
going to explain the data real quick. Black
Okay.
people are leaving New York City because they're getting priced out. The black population in the last decade has dropped by 23%. Does that make sense to you? They're just leaving. They're moving to other
Gentrification.
states.
So
The
I like
crime
how
rate-
we've moved completely from stop and frisk to, well, now it's because they're leaving. This is why studies are important,
No,
guys, instead of
it's
just
the
looking at like one or two
reason
numbers.
why
Because now if
crime
we
is
say, well, actually,
part
it
of
didn't
is
drop.
that.
It didn't drop as the same percentage. You're going to throw up another one. Well, actually, that was when BETV stopped showing like as much violent program. Well,
Have you
actually,
been-
that was because of blah blah blah. Like,
Have you
this
been
is why
to
we
Have
need-
you been to Harlem lately?
This is why we need.
It's full of white people now.
Why did you just lie,
Bushwick?
Stryker?
One
In
sec,
1990,
one
the
sec.
black population in New York City was 98.7%. In 2010, it's 25.5%. That's a 3 percentage point drop. You're saying that's going to account for the
I will
massive...
link you. I
Let's
will
give-
link you a demographic study from a black website.
I
There you
don't
go.
care. I don't care
Why-
where it comes
Oh, you don't
from.
care about it? Okay. here it
No,
is.
I just care about how accurate the
people
data
are
is.
leaving-
Are you suggesting blacks
Alright.
don't have the authority to speak on these topics?
I
Yeah.
think the person who
Of
has
course
the
they
best
don't.
idea
They're
should have
fucking
the
white
authority.
liberals,
Hey,
just like
listen.
Malcolm
Hey,
X
listen.
said.
All
As a
right,
white
Wait,
guy,
I'm sorry,
Wait,
wait,
hold on,
Back to
wait,
the
wait.
main topic.
As a white guy who appreciates the importance of empiricism, I would not want either of you motherfuckers speaking for me in any regard. So no, I do not think that race is actually the
We don't
determining
speak for
characteristic
you.
for whether or not data is
We don't
correct.
speak for you.
Yeah, and
We
also
don't
let's
speak
be
for
real.
you. We
If you
don't
claim to
pretend
speak, if you
Okay.
claim to speak on behalf of Europeans, I mean, we might as well be speaking on behalf of
Yeah,
people. Come on, Psycho, let's be
absolutely.
real, dude.
Okay.
My
We
brother
will-
Destiny over here.
We'll kick it over to
Europeans
James and Eric
and
now.
whites in the New World
We'll
have
give,
nothing
we'll
in
give a
common.
minute or
That's
two to,
Okay.
just to be sure. Hold on, just to be sure there's order. We'll kick it over to Eric and James to give responses now.
Yeah, Striker, if you want to finish what you're saying.
In 2000, what I was saying is that the black population in New York City from 2010 to now went from 28% in 2010 to 22%, and it keeps on dropping. Okay,
Wait, from what
There's
year to
other-
what year? I actually missed that. I'm not.
it's in the chat. You can look at it. It's
Okay,
from
I'll
Vine.
look at it.
So black people are just leaving the city because they're getting priced out. You know who's pricing them out? It's people like you and Destiny who are gentrifying all these neighborhoods that they
What does
live
this
in.
have to do with
Harlem
our
is full of
arguments?
whites now. Harlem is full of white people
No,
now.
he's right
because
there. I've
white
got
liberals.
4 homes in Harlem right now that I exclusively lease out to
Well,
white
I think
families.
it is.
People that
Are
think
you
like
denying
you.
that it's important if we're going to talk about the amount of black crime in a city? The amount of black people isn't relevant. Is that the suggestion here? Because I think it's actually very relevant.
What would be
Okay,
relevant is you
problem
addressing
that,
the data.
The problem is that you
Oh,
guys
he's
haven't
getting
found an
mad.
actual analysis. You're just throwing out random numbers. First of
Oh,
all,
he's
I like how you
Destiny-
started citing crime from 91, ignoring the fact that stop and frisk didn't start until like fucking 2002. Okay, so firstly, that's funny. Okay, that you go back to the most violent point in history, and then you try to draw a line between then and now, in times when stop and frisk wasn't even implemented. And then instead of actually like having an actual analysis by an actual educated person taking into account a lot of variables, you're just like trying to throw like 2 or 3 stats here. Like we've got like monocausal things going on here. It's just like so stupid.
Likewise, they're trying to use a population drop in black people in New York City from 2010 to present day, as though that explains a crime change that took place from the
91.
1990s. Yeah. Do you realize like you could have done some research beforehand? Maybe you found a couple of data
1990
points.
No, oh, listen. Will you listen? Listen. It's pure snark. Very little said. You guys are actively and maliciously misinterpreting what I said. Stop and frisk, and which is a part of broken windows policing, right? It's associated with it. Would you admit that? You will. So, broken windows policing.
I thought you said you wouldn't speak for me.
Under Bratton and Giuliani from 1990 to 1992. You had I'm sorry, from 1994 to 96. Bratton was the New York City Police Department commissioner. So the point is that Bratton, Giuliani, and Kelling were the ones that came up with the theory and implemented it in the early to mid 90s. Okay, and that's just so happens that the crime rate went down drastically. I'm not talking about crimes like pissing in the street and things like that. They did police that, but also crimes like the reason, the philosophy behind it is that people that are, and I'm not saying I necessarily agree with all of this, by the way, but the philosophy of broken windows policing is that if you allow fare evasion or people get drunk in public and things like that, those people are more likely to commit more violent crimes. So they lock them up ahead of time. Now, you could say that's wrong, that's right, whatever. It dropped the crime rate, okay? It's just logic. The types of people that do that
What year
are going to
was
be...
this implemented?
This is in the early to mid-90s. Look up Giuliani, Mayor Giuliani. I'm sure you know who that is. And Commissioner Bratton and Kelling. These were the guys
what
that
policy?
created broken windows policing and stop and frisk. That was implemented at the same
Which
time.
one?
Broken windows policing is not a policy.
It's a
That's like an
speci- it's like a
overall theory on how to
philosophy.
deal with crime. I don't even know if you know.
Right.
What it is.
Again,
Here
this
we
is,
go.
this is splitting hairs. And,
No,
and
we're
it's not
I'm
splitting
asking
hairs.
you.
Wait, that's
It
like
is.
saying what was your favorite policy of like
Thank you.
George Bush?
Thank
You
you.
say like
Thank
the
you.
war on terrorism or the war.
Thank
That's
you.
not
It is
a
a-
policy.
well,
That's like
we
an
can-
overall
Okay,
ideology
it
of
is
how to
a
approach something.
guiding. Yes, it is a guiding theory on policing. That is true, and it is a theory that informed the policies they implemented as mayor.
Don't even
and
bother
police
explaining.
commissioner.
Let's
I mean,
just-
this
let's
is
just
this
keep
is
going
this is
This
the
is-
reality.
Striker learned
By the
something
way,
new at least.
well,
They
by
have
the-
no argument. So that's
By the
what they have
way,
to do.
1990 New York City black population 29%, 2010 25.5. So we see an approximate, what is that, 12% drop in the black population in those years.
And from when to when? What was the decrease
90 to
in violent
2010.
crime? 90 to 2010. And what was the decrease? He said 30 homicides to 3 and that little itty bitty 12% drop in the black
combine that with
population,
broken windows policing and stop and frisk.
100,000.
Oh my God! You know what would be a great way to combine that with? It would be done in a study. That would be great.
Let's
could you imagine
the
that?
term for this
homicide rates of
researcher that
cities.
tried to correlate all these things.
The term for this is superlative correlations, in which when you get a grab bag of data points that sound convincing, and you
like
start
a
piecing
homicide
together, you put them up in your corkboard, you've got your twine and your push pins, and you try to make a story out of it. All we have to do is link
more or
studies.
less likely to commit murder.
Wait. What does that have to do with anything? Remember earlier when I said that
all
you types do
the
is
crime rate went down when more black people were.
Remember how I said earlier that when you guys are confronted with data more complicated than you're capable of understanding, you lean back and say,
here we go. Here we go.
1350. Hey, wait, really quickly. Wait. I want to actually get this back on track really quickly, if I may. I hope nobody minds, because we've been, I guess, arguing over your inability to understand data for a little while now. We got to maybe 3 of 40 studies. Hold up. Whoa. I agree. I agree. So how about we get to the other dozens of studies I have that uniformly inform the idea?
This is why it's a waste of time to debate white liberals. They're just cynics.
Oh, you're backing off that easy?
Well, I mean,
no,
this is an important point, though. The idea that data only becomes valid when packaged by someone at a university in a certain way that agrees with you.
Classic anti-intellectualism.
That's a really good point that James brings up. Like, yeah, but like the funny thing is that like any educated person listening to this, like the fact that you just said is an insult with standard practice, data isn't worth anything as a single stat. Of course, these are always contextualized. The fact that you thought that was some kind of
Destiny. We're giving the context for them.
You're creating
random data points.
You're creating context.
What we'll do is, hold on one second. Just forgive me. I've got everybody on mute. What we'll do is change things up a bit with maybe 2 minutes from each side, kind of alternating back and forth, just to be sure that it's been going really well so far. And so it's at the same time bubbly. So where were we last? Who would be willing to defer?
I'd like to move the
other?
Conversation in a more productive direction, if I may.
I would, but I would also like to talk about this just for like 1 minute too, because it's just very important.
We can split 1 minute between us. You want to go first?
Sure, that sounds great. Okay,
you go first. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So like you creating context for a given stat isn't just comparing one number to another. That's not creating context. Anybody that's ever read a single econ study, a single sociology study, any study like this will know that when you actually try to measure the effectiveness of a given policy, there's a lot of things that go into that work. So for instance, you might see if other cities that are comparable in population demographics or socioeconomic status had similar or different policies. You might compare the effectiveness of the policy given different types of populations. You might do it over like a time scale. There's a lot of different things that you have to keep in mind when you're comparing policies between states or between like even a city and then prior in that city when you didn't have it. The idea that you think that you can just throw up one stat when I could point to like any number of other stats, for instance, like the number of prison inmates rose, the size of the police force grew, unemployment rate dramatically fell between 1990 and 1999, 25%. Like all of these things can be correlated with like decreases in burglary, homicides,
you're making
all
our
these other
point.
things.
We're at about 35.
Yeah, and I'll finish from my side if I may. So yeah, we can run this back a little bit. So a report on jury selection showed that between 1990 and 2010, state prosecutors were about twice as likely to strike black people eligible for juries in criminal cases as opposed to 26% of white people. It was double even after taking account of other correlative factors. The authors of this study testified in court, saying the odds of this taking place with no implicit bias with regards to race were about 1 in 10 trillion. We have studies on implicit bias with regards to mock jurors. We have them in plea bargaining. We have them in charge sentencing. We have them in death penalty sentencing. The amount of data on this, for you to get knocked down in the weeds of like, well, what year was broken windows policing, the policy of broken windows policing implemented? No, we didn't bring up New York.
Yes, you did. People can rewind.
Okay,
they can rewind. You guys started with New York City.
Why were those black jurors struck?
Well, yeah, I'd like to make a
point. That was about a minute.
See why? Find a study,
gentlemen. All right. Well, that was a minute 25 from Destiny Vaush. We'll give the same to Eric and James.
Yeah, Stryker, just real quick. The reason why jurors will be struck as part of the voir dire process is prior convictions, right? And so if you have prior convictions, if you have prior convictions, then you will be struck.
Hold on.
Hold on. Sorry.
No, not you, Vaush.
Just clearing it up so he knows where to go.
I want to hear this.
Yeah, and also, I mean, this analysis is only focusing on white jurors. I would like to see a similar study, as you apparently have a wealth of them, on black jurors and whether or not black jurors have biases towards whites. And this gets to the bigger point here is that you may be able to find some whites or some blacks that have implicit biases towards each other. This is not borne out in the way the system treats people, for sure. But I mean, the point being, the idea that blacks cannot be biased against whites, I would disagree with that.
Wait, I never mentioned the race of the
One
people
sec.
who struck the
they've still got about
jurors.
30. Still got about 30 seconds.
Let the European go.
Yeah.
If you
Well,
want a
here's
striker.
the thing. Here's the thing. The concept of a Bronx jury is very well known. It's an implicitly and explicitly biased black jury, not to mention the fact that jurors, like James said, are often struck because they have criminal records or they have some other issue going on. So, I mean, all these questions always beg the question, why? Why are blacks treated slightly differently than whites? Why are they more likely to get struck from a jury? Why are they more likely to be stopped and arrested? And the question, and then the answer where we disagree, we both agree on the fact that blacks are more likely to commit murder. I mean, I'm sure you guys already agreed to that. So the question is then,
About time.
yeah. So the question
if you want to,
And time.
I'd
I'd love to respond. So again, that was accounted for. I never mentioned the race of the people striking the eligible jurors. And additionally, I love the fact that whenever presented with data you're unfamiliar with, you don't know anything about this study. You don't know any of its control variables, when it was conducted, how it was conducted, the selection size, the sample rate, the p-hat. You don't know anything about it. But you're like, well, something has to account for that bias. It can't be racism. Maybe there were prior. Oh, wait, we accounted for priors. Maybe they smelled worse. You would go to anything. And this is the reason why we get to point to studies and you get to point to out of context data points.
We can cross-reference.
Because it is very easy.
Are blacks more likely to be felons? The answer is yes.
That has. Wait. I think that's really important. That has literally nothing to do with the study that I have cited.
Absolutely, it does.
No, that's accounted for.
That's called racism. Or what? If you're trying to say that like a jury is more likely to be biased against a black person because
I'm sorry, I misinterpreted that. If you're saying, well, those black jurors were more likely to have been criminals, that's accounted for. If you're saying, well, they were more likely to have been struck because the person doing the striking believes they're criminals, that's literally racism you're defending.
So we agree with each other then. That's fine.
Go ahead and take it.
You're just pro-racism and we're anti-racism. We're not arguing over whether it exists, just whether or not it's good.
That's about a minute 20. So we'll kick it over to James and Eric for a minute 20.
Yeah, I mean, the idea though that the jury selection in and of itself can it be looked at to explain the disproportionate sentencing?
It's not. I've got data on that too.
One sec.
Data. Sorry. No. The idea that the jury selection in this very specific case. Where was this study conducted, by the way?
Let's find out. Michigan State University College of Law. Let's find the population. You can keep talking while I find the population.
Yeah, sure. So the idea that this is an explainer of a racism in the criminal justice system. I mean, this study actually is an outlier when you look at other studies that
what other studies
that examine. Well, I'm about to mention one, Destiny, if you'd let me finish. That, for example, a study from Washington State University finds that police officers, by the way, these are the police officers that are killing unarmed black men, supposedly, that police officers actually hesitate longer before shooting black suspects than whites.
What does that have to do with the
study? You get the death penalty if you.
Do you know what a pivot is?
One sec. I got to give him 20 more seconds.
Okay,
yeah,
sure.
No, one last thing. One last thing is that Destiny already admitted that the crime rate went down because there's more cops and more people in prison. Okay, that's basically what we all agree on. The question is, why are they mostly black, the ones in prison?
That had nothing to do with the data.
That's what Destiny said.
No, we were arguing whether stop and frisk was the
more cops, more prisoners, plus stop and frisk.
I don't think he ever said
in the New York context. Yeah, Chicago has 7 times the murder rate as New York City. Philadelphia 6 times the murder rate.
This has not again. Do we notice?
They don't have to stop and frisk.
Do we notice the pattern?
There.
We notice the pattern every time. No actual way of comparing these data points, just throwing out of context data points. It's actually embarrassing. I'm cringing over here. Do you want to respond to the actual data point that I cited with regards? Again, you can find it. The study writers testified under oath the likelihood of that taking place, those disproportionate odds being about 1 in 10 trillion, unless racism was involved. They testified that in a court of law. Of course, perjury is a crime. If you'd like to look over that and attest to that specifically, that'd be fantastic. I don't know what policing has to do with jury selection, but
I'm just quoting Destiny. Destiny said the crime rate went down because there's more police and more people in prison. That's what he said. So I'll agree with him 2/3 of the way there. I think in the New York City context, the reason it's the safest big city in America, or was until very recently, until you anarchists turned it into a jungle.
Do you want me to go to an easier
anarchist
study?
Anarchist riders. Until very recently, it was the safest city in America by per capita.
Go to an easier study for you?
You compare it to places like Chicago. You compare it to places like Philadelphia. You compare it to other big cities. and they have no stop and frisk, and the crime rate is exponent murder rate.
What you think
'Cause
New
you
York
can't-
City
you
is
can't
comparable
blame
to all
dead
those other
bodies
cities?
on racism.
New York City is one
You
of
can't
the
blame
like,
dead
most
bodies on
unique-
racism.
We'll
New
kick
York
it
City is
over
one
to
of the most-
Destiny. And,
Yeah, I'm just the idea that you think that New York City is comparable to those other cities. New York City is one of the most unique cities in the United States of America, right? That, like picking out like things particular to New York. If we've seen anything, with the whole coronavirus stuff, like we can see that New York City is like a
Goalpost
pretty unique
moving.
place in terms of like
Move
how
that
it sits in
goalpost.
the world. I'm not moving any
Hold on.
goalpost.
Move
You haven't met the
We've gotta let him
incredibly low
finish.
bar that we've already set.
Hey, Bugman, I lived
gotta
in New
let him
York City. I
finish.
Hey,
lived. I was
calm
born and grew up
down,
there. What
Strike.
are you
Calm.
telling me?
Whoa
We've
there,
got-
big
we've
boy.
got another minute. We got
What is-
another minute left.
Why like I don't know what to say. Like when you're throwing out, like I lived there, like I went down on the streets every day and I collected unbiased data on
honestly-
the crime rates, and I looked at the
There's not even
policies.
there's not even anything to respond to be
yeah.
honest.
I don't know what to say. This
Ye-
is like cheating because if they say a bunch of dumb shit for 2 minutes, James, and I have nothing to respond to, what am I supposed to do with my time?
Yeah, we
Okay,
can.
well,
Well,
then-
I
well, then
can. I can
how-
I wasn't
always.
how
ready
do
for this
you
strategy.
address-
I can throw out a new study if we want. So in this
Well,
study,
let's address my study first, actually.
What study?
Let's address a study from Washington State University. I believe it was 2013
Uh-huh.
that found that police officers. You can talk about jury selection.
Oh yeah,
and
no,
again,
that study is right. Yeah, we can give you that one. We can give you that one, and it doesn't impact anything else. We're
I
saying.
have
Police
never
don't
made the
think they wanna
claim.
shoot-
I have never
police-
made the claim. This is a white on black thing. Only systemic bias against black people committed
It might-
by
it might
white or
be
black
that-
cops, white or black judges. Doesn't matter.
And it might be
So-
that
wait,
police
so-
hesitate more before shooting a black person than a white person. That has nothing to do with the broader argument, though. Like that's great that you have that one.
Well, I'm
study.
sure
Seemed
it
to be
does.
reasonable when I read it. Yeah.
It would, though, doesn't it? Because what you're contending is that there is a nascent racism that is that pervades the criminal justice system, and if that were to be true, you would expect that to be present in the frontline enforcers of that criminal justice system.
Can I take a second
which
to
is
explain
police.
systemic bias?
Well,
Also,
allow me to finish my point here. And the study from Washington State University found that that police officers are the most likely to hesitate 1.61 seconds before shooting a black suspect compared to 1.37 seconds for a white suspect. And that might seem like a small amount of time, but in a critical life or death situation, that is very important. And so again, this idea that if the police officers, which again are the frontline enforcers of the criminal justice system, you claim to be racist. If they were to be racist against blacks, for example, then they would be less hesitant to shoot them, right? But they actually hesitate longer for blacks than they do with whites.
okay. So again, we never made any counterclaim on that one. It makes sense that given all of the racial antagonism surrounding the police brutality that they commit against black people, that they might be more hesitant in some instances to open fire on black people. We never made any claim counter to that, and it has nothing to do with our broader claim. Do you think it's a little bit funny that I'm like, here's a bunch of like meta-analyses on broader racial injustice, and you say, well, here's one study. It takes the cop 1.2 seconds longer to kill the black
That's
man.
exactly what you're doing, Vaush. And by the way, would that not be an example of an anti-white bias? If you guys want to present the argument that there's an anti-black
Sure,
bias
now
in
just
policing,
demonstrate it
what
in
we
the
have
entire
here is
criminal
now
justice
evidence-
system.
Is evidence
We're
of an
talking
anti-white
about the
bias.
totality of the criminal justice system right now. We're talking about a disproportionate thing that black people face at every single level of law enforcement, not just whether or not white cops are more likely to pause when they're shooting
Well,
white or
except for
black
police
people.
engagements, apparently. But this is
Well, no,
this
we
is
are
so
talking
weird.
about police engagements. Hold on. Do you think that the only type of police engagement?
So
is
what's
officers
Black Lives
shooting at
Matter
somebody?
about? If it's not about shooting unarmed black men, what the
We're
fuck
not
is it?
talking about Black Lives.
We're
Why do you
talking
keep
about
pivoting to
systemic
other-
You're not talking-
racial
so what
bias.
the?
Hold on.
Oh my God. Hold on. I'm sorry.
Go
Striker,
Go
hold on.
ahead, go ahead.
Striker, call me there. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
If you want, either you or maybe if you've got a caretaker can check your email. You can actually go and
There
look
we
at what we're
go.
supposed to be talking about. It's not Black Lives Matter.
Oh.
Maybe you're in the wrong debate. I'm not sure if there was like a Daily
Oh.
Stormer episode that you missed or something. But yeah, I mean, you
They
can go
want
check
an
your email.
easier
It's
topic.
so pedantic. It's so
Yeah,
pedantic.
there we
No,
go,
it's
here we go.
No, I mean, we
listen,
have-
buddy,
we have here
my
It's not
friend.
pedantic. It's the
One second.
point.
My good,
One
my
second.
fellow.
They're not making any
Whoa,
argument.
calm down, my fellow.
Hold on 1 second.
The discourse, my fellow European friends. Okay, we came here to talk about whether or not there is a systemic bias against black people in the American criminal justice system, and the evidence to that effect is very compelling. We acknowledge that study on cop fire delay times does not rebutte our point in any way, shape, or form. And it's entirely possible for a criminal justice system, which is generally biased against black people, to sometimes have disproportionate outcomes against white people. For example, I believe that for the most part, we live in a pretty sexist society against women, but men get shafted in some pretty specific ways that I'm happy to acknowledge. But when I'm trying to talk about society at large, it's a little weird if we're looking at a totality of data and you keep pointing out like family courts. And that's what we're doing right now, essentially. So if we may, I'd like to move on to another study. I'm very interested in hearing how you're able to divinely talk about which correlative factors they weren't able to account for in this one. In this study, 2 groups of mock jurors were given a collection of race-neutral evidence from an armed robbery, with one group's alleged perpetrator being shown to be light-skinned and the other dark-skinned. These mock jurors were significantly more likely to evaluate ambiguous race-neutral evidence against the dark-skinned suspect as incriminating and more likely to find that dark-skinned subject guilty. Now, there are no other confounding variables here. It's a study. It's an experiment. There's nothing else. It's all mocked. And yet, in spite of that, the jurors, black and white, were more likely to find criminality in the actions of the alleged dark-skinned perpetrator.
So the black people are racist against black people, too.
We're
That's
talking
right,
about
yeah.
systems here.
Well, are systems made up of people, or are they just magical?
I mean, even if we
clouds in the sky?
even if we grant that and say, yeah, black people could be racist against white people as well. I mean, the problem right now is that white people have the predominant power in the criminal justice system. So it seems like that's the problem that we should be addressing.
Where are you
That
getting?
would
Where's your
be-
study to show that?
Sure.
You have
And
a study for that?
Wait. Are you skipping?
Where's my study to show that white people are
Yes.
the predominant power in?
Yes. Where's
I
your
mean, I
study?
could do a composition of Congress.
Show
with
me a
people that
study.
are,
Are black people are white people more likely to be, I don't know, the mayor of a black majority city?
We
Are
don't
white
need
people
to
more
sink to the
likely-
bad faith arguments right here.
Are white people the police chiefs in every place from St.
Wait,
Louis to
this
Detroit?
actually tracks.
Seattle.
You think Western
me, like-
civilization is being destroyed, so you must think
No,
black
now
people
you're
are actually in
changing
charge of
topic.
America. That actually
I
makes
don't-
sense from your perspective.
No, wrong. Let me correct you on that.
You think
I don't
Obama's still the shadow president?
I personally have no personal hatred for black people. I don't. And I don't think they're in charge. I think Jews are in charge.
I know.
That's who I think is
We
in
know.
charge.
don't
So
worry.
if you want to talk about that, we can have that another discussion about that. But
I
don't
know
want
you'd
your-
like to move to
your
that because
sponsors.
it's another opportunity for you to use a bunch of
Oh.
spurious conspiratorial claims without looking at any
so-
evidence.
Meanwhile, here you are talking about this white privilege.
Do you want to
nonsense.
respond to the study that I have never said white privilege once in this entire discussion?
I want Destiny to show me a study showing that white people are disproportionately powerful.
Are you
in the criminal
pivoting?
justice system. No.
Are you really? Are
he
you
made
avoiding?
a claim and he has no evidence to back it up.
Answer the question.
Show- what question do you
Answer
want
the
to be
question,
answered?
Striker.
What question?
Striker! Why
Yeah,
were those
okay, you don't
mock
have a
jurors
question.
biased?
Why? Well, your claim is that black people are racist
No,
against black people. in
no,
Germany.
nope. Our
Yes.
claim is that jurors, whether or not they're black or white, Asian, Hispanic, engaged in bias against dark-skinned individuals. Now, in America, where you are
Quantify
tried by
that
a
bias.
jury
Show
of your
me-
peers,
Show me statistics about that bias.
yeah,
Show me
sure.
statistics
Yeah, here you
about
go.
that bias.
So
Well-
in America, we are tried by a jury of our peers, meaning that our
Right.
juries will be made up of black, white, Asian, Hispanic.
I'm asking you,
what
what
have
is
people.
the origin of that bias? Explain that to me.
Wait. So again, you know there's a bias.
No,
You're
I'm
just
not saying.
okay
I'm not.
with it.
No, hold on. I'm not admitting that. I'm saying you're saying that all races are biased against
You're
black
justifying a
defendants.
racial bias right now. You're doing it. You're making my
well,
argument
that-
for me.
Calling people. First of all, I don't give a shit if you call me racist, and second of all,
It makes my
I don't
argument
care.
easier,
Maybe
if you
racial biases are real. I mean, men. I guarantee that there are studies that show men are more likely to be frowned upon by a jury than women.
Yes.
Right. There's
Yes.
plenty of studies.
Yes.
So
And
is
then-
that
yeah,
because
and
of
then
systematic misandry?
bias? Yes, against men in the criminal justice system. Yes, for violent crimes, men are
Oh.
significantly more likely to be sentenced, and I've talked about that on stream and in
So
fact done
that's
videos on it.
anti-male bias. Then.
Yes.
You believe in that.
Or I
Okay.
guess too light on women. I don't really know, but it's one of those things. Yeah.
So what's your solution to that? Is
Wait,
that to
are you? So
increase
you
penalties
really
on
are
women?
pivoting? I actually just responded to your question, and you're unwilling to address the specific thing that I just said.
Are men more
you
likely
okay?
to be? Are juries more likely to be biased against
Why are you
men?
pivoting?
Because men can. Are juries more likely? Because I'm trying.
Why
'cause
are you
the problem
pivoting?
is, if we talk about race, you're set in your ideology, right?
Why?
You have a racial ideology. You don't have a canned line for
Are
the rest of the stuff.
You
So here you go. If a jury is
Pivoting.
more biased against black people, what were the factors like the nature of the crime, the rap sheet of the black criminal, all of these things?
Wait,
that
this is
come
an
into
experiment.
question-
There's no rap sheet.
Actually, I'm going through the thing right now, and he does bring up a good point because all of these crimes were stealing truckloads of Nikes. So Stryker actually just completely blew us out of the water on that one. Fuck, I'm sorry.
It's
We
an
have to move on to
experiment,
the next
Striker. There's no other correlating factor you can
Like, I
point
don't think
to.
you understand that these aren't real life people, right? They don't. These aren't.
Does
What
he
I'm
know?
saying-
Who
what
are
I'm
we
saying
talking
is that-
to?
What I'm saying
I
is
also,
just
and,
like
this is
Jesse
another
Jackson.
reason. Hold on, you just
What
took
I'm
like 12 minutes,
saying
okay?
is just
Another
like
reason why
Jesse
it's
Jackson, just like Jesse Jackson said once that when he hears footsteps behind him and he turns around and sees a black man, he's a lot more scared than if he sees a
What
white
are we?
man.
What are we
Black
talking
people-
about?
I'm sorry, is Jesse
Blacks-
Jackson the secret fifth person here in this?
Juries are
I
more
don't know why
likely.
we're talking about
James?
Juries are more likely to be. Hold on a second. I'm getting a phone call here.
Yes, quickly find. Find some time.
We do have one. Well, I want to make a quick announcement. We have something weird. We're both computers. I can't currently access the super chats. I think I just tweeted YouTube. I don't know if this is like for everybody or just me, but it is on both computers. So it's also on multiple browsers. Don't worry, folks. Working on it, but just want to let you know we. So maybe we'll just go a little bit longer than expected.
We crashed YouTube.
I'm not sure what's going on. I can get them to load in the Creator Studio, but I can't pull them up where it, like has their own little like sub page.
That's okay. We were all getting a little heated. I'm happy to have the moment. I've loved chilling, taking a breath.
So we are okay now. Folks, got to warn you, like at this point, it's going to be really hard for us to, if you're firing in a super chat now, it's going to be really, really hard for us to get to it based on how many we have, which looks like a lot. So want to let you know, like super chat at your own risk. And if you guys had other points that you want to get to.
Yeah, and I would just like to make the point that I think we all can acknowledge that there will be among, if you're talking about a black person or a white person, an Asian person, any person of any race, there will be some built-in in-group preference there. Regardless of who you're talking about, people are naturally preferential towards their own. And so if we have then a system that by the way does its best,
then why are the black jurors also biased against?
Well, if I could just complete,
he's actually just completely making our argument for us. Yeah, go ahead and finish, and then we.
I'm saying that these people, it's natural for human beings to have some in-group preference. That is just a fact. So then, how do you build a system that accommodates both blacks and whites, that accommodates these two different groups? And let me finish, Destiny, because the question then is, when you mention having a jury of your peers, can you ever really have a jury of your peers if that jury of your peers is not of the same race of you?
Right.
And I think a lot of blacks, this is one of their demands, is to have all black juries for black suspects. Now, I think that is a fair demand to make, and that's a demand that a black nationalist or black activists would probably make. And that's a demand that I think Stryker and I would make for whites as well. And so the only way to accomplish, if you believe it is possible to have this system that treats all people fairly, regardless of their race, is to have separate systems, to have separate courts of law, separate judicial systems, one for blacks and one for whites. And that would then solve the problem.
Black police, black courts, black juries, black judges for black people, and white people get the same
would then
rights.
solve this issue. And by the way, it would be very interesting then to do that same study that you keep mentioning about jury bias and so on and so forth.
Still haven't responded to, by the way.
Well, I'm making the point that if you then saw blacks, this black judicial system continue to be biased against darker skinned blacks, I mean, at that point, it's like, what do you even do with that, right? If that's how blacks are going to govern.
You've conceded.
I actually think that's a really good question that James also brings up. I think that we should come back and we could have a second debate on how do we address the racial biases that exist inside the criminal justice system. Because also just made a huge argument that we all have in-group preferences. White people are currently, make up the majority of like legislative branches of district judges everywhere. So we've already conceded the point completely, basically, that we are in fact correct.
Well,
I don't need to. No, I don't need to. Also, just conceded your argument entirely. He just said that we all have in-group preferences.
No, because
we don't need to find data to agree with your point.
Can I finish my talking
Either
points?
me
As European gentlemen,
okay,
European gentlemen, okay, with great traditions from Europe, okay, we should allow each other to speak.
Yeah, it's called America.
So,
I'm an American. Do not call me a European. Thank you.
Well,
like 50-50 European American. It depends on who I'm talking to at the time. But anyway, so if you can see that, we could come back and we can have a discussion on how should we sit here and address the problems of systemic racism. But if you're going to sit here and concede that systemic racism exists, then like,
why don't we have that discussion now?
Well, actually,
because we didn't prepare for that, and unlike you guys, we actually prepare for our conversation.
Well, no, I'd like to make a very important corresponding point to what I just said is that actually, when you look at how whites are treated by the justice system, even though there is this in-group preference, whites are actually treated very poorly by this justice system in the United States. We can look at, for example, the right to peacefully protest. How are white peaceful protests treated versus black people?
This is completely, you don't want to get into this.
One sec.
Oh, sure we do.
This is some like tier 11 dumb fuck argument.
Okay, we can debate that at another time. But the point we're getting at here is if black people, whether real or not, me and James are not conservatives. We're not invested in a perfectly objective justice system at all.
We know.
I am willing to listen to black people. I'm willing to listen to black people, like in Black Lives Matter, who are demanding hospitals that are staffed and for blacks, we want the same for whites. Let's do that.
Who
The obvious solution to systematic
What are we
racism
talking
to the
about
extent
right
that
now?
One sec.
the-
let's
the-
let him finish, Promise. We'll come right back to you, Vaush and Destiny.
the obvious solution to black people feeling like they live under a racist system is to give black people their own rights in their own system. Isn't that the obvious solution here?
Okay, where do we?
I mean, I don't even know who he's arguing against. At
Yeah,
this point.
So
the-
you'd agree?
Well,
Separate
wait,
systems for
hold on.
separate
So
people.
really quickly, okay, because trying to make any points with you people is like pulling teeth. So the argument is conceded. There is a bias in the criminal justice system in the country of the United States of America. Now, I would point out factors like even a majority black cities, there's still not a supremely large bias against white individuals who are tried in those systems. In fact, the opposite seems to be the case. And whereas black people in very white cities tend to have the opposite inflicted on them. So the idea that this in-group preference is some sort of neutral, socially ambivalent force that equally directs black people against whites and white people against blacks doesn't really seem to be true. The fact that you would try to defer to white protests as a sort of measuring stick for how white people are treated by our criminal justice system is pretty funny. If you want to have a conversation about what can be done to improve the disparity in our country's criminal and racial injustice, I mean, you're going to have to provide data
I'll
that
provide
an
data.
ethno
There
state-
can
But
be-
also, wait,
there
before
can
they
be-
respond
there
to,
can
before
be
they
no
respond to, hold on,
racism.
before they respond
Okay,
to,
go
I
ahead.
would like to say it's pretty funny that you think talking to people from like the Nation of Islam is like representative of black opinions across the United States.
That's
That'd be
still
like
black
me saying
people
I
that
talked to
agree with me
Charlottesville
than you.
neo-Nazi marchers, and I
Yeah.
talked to these people, and I think that their opinions are representative of
Well,
even the
we have a
conservative party, let
Charlottesville
alone-
neo-Nazi marcher
Thousands,
here.
let's kick
so-
you and
Let's
Vaush,
kick it
you
back
and
to
Vaush
Eric
have
and let's
thousands
go
of
back to
progressive
Eric and
fans.
also.
You and Vaush have thousands of progressive fans and couldn't find a single black person to at least bring on as a fucking token.
Wait, we don't.
on
Wait, we
on
don't
this-
like
on this debate.
tokenism.
Well, and I'd like to just add on to
Right,
what
you don't
Striker's
have
saying.
black people at all. At least conservatives have their
Wait,
tokens.
I'm the
point I'm
streamer.
getting at, back to
Hey,
what
we
we
don't
were
know, but
saying.
have you seen the voter
Back
base?
to-
Are
back
you
to the-
serious right now?
okay,
What do you mean?
Back to what we were saying. Back to what we were
That
saying.
strong
before.
African American
Well,
Republican vote.
The factor of
Let's go back to-
racism. You
let's
guys
go to
aren't
Eric
letting me
and
talk.
also-
The factor of racism is 100% eliminated by having a system where black people have black police, they have black community leaders, they have black judges and jurors. That is entirely a non-factor. There is no chance of a white person discriminating or people or an Asian person or any other kind of person like that discriminating on a jury or as a police officer or anything if we only have separate systems.
Then explain
So-
Ferguson. Ferguson, led by black people, black police officers majority, black people were treated fucking horribly in that city.
I'm saying if
No, explain- no,
racism
explain
is
it.
the original sin of white people. which
Never.
I assume it
Wait! Stop with
completely-
all this self-persecutory bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in reading your fucking MySpace blog. Okay, I didn't say shit about white people. I'm asking you if black people will treat black folk better and white folk will treat white folk better. Explain to me why Ferguson, as a federal investigation, was shown to be massively biased against its black inhabitants, in spite of the fact that almost
Ferguson
every.
was run by a Republican mayor. For your information,
Wait, if you want to look at the demographics of that city. Wait.
Ferguson has many white people in it, and it has a conservative.
What
mayor, and
percentage?
there's a lot of-
Wait,
this
you're
all came out during
weaseling.
the
Wait,
trial,
you're
but the
weaseling.
point I'm getting at
I
is,
mean, the idea is if you want to remove a variable, if we want to be scientific and remove the independent variable here, we can just remove diversity, right? And if you want to find how
it doesn't
people will
help.
treat each other, well, it does, because then there's no opportunity for white racism or
Then
or
find.
black
Wait.
anti-white
We're not
racism
saying
to
white on
have
black
an impact
racism.
on the criminal
We're saying
justice system
systemic
if there are
racism.
Listen,
no
if you want
against
to say
black
black
people.
people,
outside
One
race
sec, one sec.
in a
Order,
system.
order. All right.
okay,
Where
one
were
last
we?
thing. If listen, I sympathize with black people that go to school and have to read Shakespeare. Go to school and it's named after some white man or something. I sympathize that black people don't feel any connection to this stuff. I totally sympathize because when I had to read fucking Chinua Achebe, I felt no connection
We
to that
don't
either.
Care.
So the point I'm making here is that black people have a right to their own community, their own police, their own culture, and to be taught their own values in school. And I agree. Listen, the main black criticism here of the criminal justice system is that it's a system created by whites for whites to benefit whites. Whatever the merits of that argument is, I don't even care. Let's create a system for blacks by blacks and get
If
it over with.
you were
That's it.
correct, then it should be easy for you to find a study on how greater levels of black representation in city councils, mayorships, and police representation leads to a decrease in the disproportionately negative treatment of black citizens in that city. I guarantee you will not be able to find that study. As
Also,
it turns,
I would just like to say that, in terms of like talking about the breakdown for how we change a lot of this stuff, like if we wanted to do a separate conversation on this, I'm really hesitant to do it on the fly, but I'm pretty sure me and Vaush between us have like 20 different suggestions related to like the war on drugs. It's funny, you guys brought up like black juries, black people. Community policing is one of the big like things that a lot of people actually want in this country. Like we could name like 20 policies offhand.
Yeah.
I'd be super interested,
I agree.
Stryker, and your suggested realistic, politically possible policies that are going to get us to fucking like kingdoms of different racial countries in the United States. Like what a fucking pipe dream.
I look forward to being like,
people-
here's a policy we could maybe look at. Here's some studies on it. You're like, well, if we just had an ethno state, we wouldn't have that problem. Like, what would the
how
discussion
fucking
be?
boring.
I'm not saying necessarily an ethno state, but if black people want to live in their own communities with their own system, I personally think they have a right to do that.
Yeah, so that would be the discussion. Just
Now,
back
you
and
two,
forth.
the white liberals that
We-
have crowned themselves the leaders of the black community.
Why do you keep
You
doing
may
that?
disagree. You may disagree that that's what's good for
Are
black
you the
people.
leader of the
I'd
white
rather
community?
have this conversation
sec.
with actual black people and see what they want. Why the fuck do we have to argue with you about this?
Then why did you
guys
agree to
are
this
just here-
debate, Stryker?
Dude,
Stryker, why did you
guys-
agree to this
you
debate
guys
if you didn't want to
think-
talk to white people about this?
They didn't
We
want
are-
to talk to
you
us.
guys-
Is what they didn't want
You
to talk
guys
to.
are just here to obfuscate things that white people and black people, by and large, will agree
They
with if they sit down and have a conversation. Well, you Jews and distractors and
It's 'cause
liberals, all this
doesn't have
shit
anything to say.
that you
Yeah.
people represent, you have the minority
We
opinion.
Probably could go into Q&A
Is
now,
this a what is it
or I
called?
should say closing statements. So
what is it called when the senator won't stop talking? Destiny?
Filibuster.
Filibuster. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But
I mean,
basically, the problem is that like they wanted to come and have this conversation. They wanted to like appeal to like one or two random numbers, like that proved the point. And then he
Oh.
realized, oh shit, I have
He
nothing
asked-
to say.
he asked
Why
to
am I
debate
talking to
black
white people? Oh no!
And then,
now it's like this.
and then instead of
I wanna-
debating
Stryker,
instead of
you had
debating Black
every-
Lives Matter, we got Cuck Lives Matter debating.
Why are we
Hold on,
never
hold on,
this debate
because-
was never so wait, first off, I would like to make a request to the moderator. James,
sure.
can you tell me one, if the statement of what we were going to be debating is known by all parties beforehand? Two, can you read that statement? And three, did Stryker know? Okay, and I'm sincerely asking this: did Stryker know that me and Vaush were white coming into this debate? Because Destiny kind of sounds like a black girl's name. Maybe he forgot the last time we had a horrendously embarrassing conversation where he tried to say jazz wasn't real music. Maybe he
I'll
just
stick
forgot
to
that
that.
we were both white. I'm not sure. Can you verify those three things for me? I don't know how you're going to do
it's
the
not
third part.
Destiny, Jazz. He must have been black.
I can do the first two.
You can do-
So
okay,
if you guys would like, let's see.
my camera's on, right? You can see. I know that my lighting's a little dark right now, but like most people would consider me white. I would say the vast majority of Europeans that see me would probably consider me
All right.
white.
Yeah, I
So
met him.
it's
He's
good that
pretty
you get
pale.
to you get to speak on behalf of what black
Well-
people think. There you
well,
go.
Speaking
well,
of, we
because
just
what's
we're
good
not
for
we're
them?
not talking about what black people think. We're just
Yeah.
going over some studies.
Because we
yeah,
haven't
okay.
actually completed. I mean, we have not conceded the point that that in the United States there is a rampant systemic bias against blacks in the criminal justice system. I still disagree with that, Stryker, and I
I-
still disagree with
wait,
that.
Wait, also,
The
we
we
don't
don't
idea-
think
care if there is.
Destiny, if I can get more than 15 seconds, James, that would be excellent. The idea that there is a widespread systemic bias against blacks, this is not borne out when we look at federal policing, federal law enforcement, for example.
In what way? What studies? What data?
what studies?
No,
I
say-
love
wait,
that.
wait,
I
in
love
what
it.
way?
I love it when he asks me for data. It's such
What-
bullshit.
what-
Is
No,
London the
if-
capital of Britain? Show me a study.
Wait, whoa. You're just going to appeal to that? Like, well, we can see by looking at federal
That's the
data
whole
that you're
argument.
wrong.
Wait, you think you can
Let
just beg the
gentlemen,
question
one
on the
second.
entire argument?
Because Sunday follows
One
Saturday.
second.
Show me the
No.
data.
1 second. I do have the phrase. If you guys want me to read the statement, I can. Otherwise,
for that.
Well,
That'd
it
be
might.
great.
if I could finish the point that I'm making without an interjection. be
If you want to
excellent.
finish this, and then I'll read the statement, and then we should probably go into the closings.
Yeah, so let's look at federal law enforcement, for example, the United States Department of Justice. The United States Department of Justice exists almost solely to identify white people in this country and charge them with federal hate crimes and
What?
prosecute them in cases such as the two men in Georgia who are being targeted with hate crimes charges. The man in what is it, New Mexico, white man in New Mexico, who defended himself against anarchists that were threatening to kill him, who is now finding himself the subject of a federal hate crimes investigation. Why, if there's a systemic bias at the system-wide level, you'd find it in the federal level.
Your
why
counter
does the-
argument
why
is
does
that
the
3 white
US
people have been
Department-
charged.
Hold on,
No,
one
let me
sec.
finish. These
One
are
sec.
examples. Vaush, they're
And where's the
examples.
data?
Examples.
Data.
Examples aren't data, dude.
We do have.
Right, but well, James, hold on. Let me finish. If you had a rampant systemic anti-black bias in federal law enforcement, you would expect there to be similar hate crime charges against blacks when blacks do things such as say, I hate white people and attack whites, such as when blacks engage in violence against whites and express a racial animus. If you look at the statistics on this, which I will find for you in about 15 seconds, blacks are actually undercharged in federal hate crimes under federal hate crimes investigations, despite them committing more violent crimes. So we have a federal
hate crimes or violent
system.
crimes?
They are underrepresented in terms of them being charged for violent hate crimes. They are underrepresented in terms of being charged and investigated. They're under-investigated for hate crimes.
The FBI doesn't even bother policing blacks.
What are we? Stop. Come on.
You can look at. Hey, let me talk for a second.
We've been talking for a while.
You can look at the murder clearance rate since the 1960s. It's gone in many cities from like 90% clearance to 60% clearance. The FBI has no interest in that. Meanwhile, they'll send 15 agents to go investigate a fake noose.
Can you provide studies on this data?
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Can you answer that? I mean, how do you?
We don't know.
There's no way to answer one-off
Where is your study to explain
examples.
this?
This is there's not a study
You provided the
one-off example.
Exactly.
I don't understand. This is
Wait. Allsup was literally like, here's some
reality doesn't exist unless it comes from an ivory tower.
Wait. You were literally just like,
we can look at real.
Here's some examples. Wait.
Gentlemen.
I appeal to the moderator if I may.
Feigning incredulity.
Can we get a response to that?
1 sec. Just okay. Everybody on the same page. Okay.
Okay. The idea of him like, here are some examples. Where's your study to explain it? What the fuck are you talking about?
Because your appeals are solely to academic authority, and that's fine if you want to do that. But we can look at the facts as they are.
I provide the studies, though. I don't ask you for them.
We can look at the facts as they are,
1 sec.
and we can say are they true or not. And we don't need something to be blessed by the ivory tower academics for it to be real. We can look at real examples of real things happening in the real world.
Can we please
and you know these guys,
hold on.
All the institutions are on their side.
Destiny, we got to switch it back.
Go ahead.
Okay, just next time, because I fully admit I'm a pussy, I would have dodged this debate if he told me that we can't use any academic evidence. Because it's a huge waste.
Yeah, that makes it much harder.
It's a huge waste of time. Like if we were going to start off with well, studies don't count. We're going to have to go by news reports. Of the 3 or 4 examples that I bring up, like what a waste of fucking time.
You're lying.
Dude, you literally, there are going to be people
confidently lying.
You're paid opposition for the
Destiny is a self-described sociopath, so he confidently
lies. Can we please calm down?
Actually, I have to go through my PayPal transactions. I might have paid for this opposition because of how fucking stupid you look right now. I don't even fucking remember right now. That's how embarrassing this conversation.
Back to the basics.
Yeah. So wait. How about we get back to the basics, which was James, the moderator. Would you kindly repeat to everyone why we came here and whether or not everyone was made aware of the debate topic before we arrived here in this Zoom call?
Is everybody good with this? All else equal, African American people are treated worse by the criminal justice system for no discernible reasons, not directly or indirectly influenced by racism or race-based policies.
Okay, so that was what we were supposed to be talking about. Every single time you pivot off the topic of discussion, you defer to data points that are not contextualized, which is what you have to do to understand what data means. This is literally correlation causation. I learned this in middle school. Every time you do that, you are silently conceding to us the fact that not only are you wrong, you have no fucking idea what you're talking about. So in the absence of any available arguments on your part, and as boring as this is getting, I think it would be wonderful if we could defer to the comparatively intelligent chatters and the super chats in which they have thrown us questions.
You're probably going to find more help there.
You guys weren't prepared at all to discuss solutions to this or anything like that.
Let's see.
That's because it wasn't the topic.
No, that's because you don't like the solution.
No, that's because it wasn't the topic.
No, that's
One sec, gentlemen. Okay, so what we'll do is we had discussed right at the very start before we went live that we would have these roughly 1 or 2 minute closings. So what we'll do is
James, real quick, can you read the context of the emails we shared, me, you, Mike, and James?
Now context is important.
It's very important because we initially asked James for black people on the other side so we can discuss these solutions and so on. Do
you have a study on that?
Can you is that
I'm asking you sincerely, do you have a study on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can. It's true. You asked for black opponents. I can pull that up and read it if you like.
What happened
when
Mike Enoch saw that the conversation was going to be against 2 people that he knew he'd lose his shit over? He left.
It was a waste of time.
Yeah, Enoch was smart. He backed out.
First of all, This is not a waste of time. Me and
He didn't
Vaush are
back
making a
down. He
lot of
said
money
he'd do
right
it in
now.
July.
Okay,
Bro,
so hold on.
no,
Number one, it's not a
actually-
waste of time. I'm making a lot of money right now. Thank you very much.
James,
and number two, you had the
James,
opportunity.
Mike said he could do it in July because
You had
he
an
didn't.
opportunity to leave
This
when you
is
saw we
such
were
a-
white.
this is such a
One
derailment.
sec. To be
It's
fair,
not-
to be
it's-
fair, I've got to. What do you guys want me to read?
I want you to read the fact that Mike said he could do it in the debate in July because he's first of all, he's doing stuff with the business. He's doing a bunch of other shit. Like there's a lot of projects going on. These people are not even worth his time. These two losers. So
It's true that Mike said yes.
But he didn't
that
waste his time then.
That is his business. Things had ramped up, and that was why he was not going to be here. If you guys want to come back in July, I'm open to it. Or if it's on another channel, we'll promote it. We'll tweet it. We'll do whatever we can so people see it there. But
right there you go.
That was the wait. You can't point to the first.
Show me the data.
part. You can't point at the first part of your negotiation and go, "Why didn't we do
All right.
that? Where did we end
Yeah,
up?"
you
move on to
accepted
this
the
You knew
debate
that you were
after you
debating
knew the
me and
opponents.
Raj.
Let's-
Yeah, like
let's
what? How
move on to-
stupid! Like
let's go on
okay,
to
so
the
this is
that's
a
like
chance where
offering like 80K
why don't
for
we
a
do a
salary for a
closing?
job, and they come back at
We should
60,
do
and then at the end of the month, you're like,
closings.
"Why didn't you
Let's
pay what
go-
we
we
initially
should do
talked
closings.
about?" Like,
Let's
how
go-
fucking stupid are you?
Let's
What the
go to
fuck?
super
should
chats.
do-
Let's go to
we
super
should
chats.
do-
Well, closing. So that would be Stryker and Alsop first because
we'll
they
kick
went
it
first.
over. Would you guys like 1 or 2 minutes for each person?
I won't need long. Whatever they want.
Yeah, sure. I could take that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's eminently clear that they that if this conversation is supposed to be a comparison of who is best at going through JSTOR and clipping abstracts that they think reinforce their points, that's if that's the metric you want to use, that's absolutely fine. But I think when it comes to addressing the real solutions for the problems that are manifest out of racial tensions in the United States, it's clear that only one side here is prepared with honest answers and an honest assessment of the inevitability of some of these problems. And like we said, the idea that there is widespread racism and anti-black treatment, blacks are just so maligned by the criminal justice system, that is debatable. I'm skeptical of that. There is evidence in policing. There's evidence in terms of black crime that this is just not the case. Blacks being undercharged for things like hate crimes. We can talk about all of that. But if you believe that blacks and whites both feel aggrieved by a criminal justice system that is not working for them, and they feel aggrieved as a condition of racial diversity, then there is only one answer. And that answer is to have separate systems. You cannot coexist in the same system because there will always be a group that perceives that they are being slighted, whether that's empirically backed up by those in ivory towers or not. So the idea that you can divorce these two things, I don't think you can. I don't think you can divorce the conversation about whether or not there is a problem without being willing to talk about how to solve that problem.
Right.
And my problem with the criminal justice system is not that blacks are being mistreated. My problem is if anything, that black criminality is not being policed hard enough, and that whites are being mistreated by the system, generally speaking. But Stryker and I, we are more than prepared to talk about how to solve this. And we solve this by having separate systems for separate people, according to their own separate values. That is the only answer. And if we were in a position to be able to talk to black leaders about this, they would agree with us. But white liberals, it is so funny how white liberals will insist on keeping blacks and whites trapped in the same system that they assert is hurting blacks so.
How many minutes?
But yet here they are insisting that they be trapped in the system together. Very funny.
Yeah.
Right.
So
That
I'll
was
go
2 minutes 12. So we'll give everybody 2 minutes and 12 seconds. Go ahead.
Gotcha. So first of all, if blacks and whites are the same, this conversation wouldn't even been happening. Like, there's no congressional hearing on whether white police officers are racist to East Asians, right? So white liberals may virtue signal in support of anti-racism, but in practice, they're all fleeing the big cities that are facing unrest right now. There's all kinds of articles in various mainstream publications about urban exodus. It's mostly these white liberal types. It's just a ridiculous argument to have because these people have no skin in the game. They are not living in these black communities. They probably don't know any black people other than Jesse Lee Peterson. So I don't even understand why they're doing this. Like, This is just absurd. We need to frankly have a very frank discussion with the black community, with their leadership, or just any black person. Actually, I am curious to hear their perspective. Their perspective is important here because they're the ones that are complaining about this stuff. So I'd like to have a conversation with them. This is something that never happens. The ADL recently, Louis Farrakhan was going to give his capstone speech of his political and social career as an activist, as a black leader. And more people know Louis Farrakhan, more black people approve and know of Louis Farrakhan than do Destiny and Vaush. I guarantee you that. And he was going to give this big address on Fox News, and the Anti-Defamation League under the Zionist Jonathan Greenblatt got him censored. So the point is, real black voices aren't even heard in these discussions. Here we are, the so-called evil neo-Nazis, demanding that we have some black people at the table and we come to an agreement, okay? Because it's pretty obvious the multiculturalism is the problem, because no one here would disagree that America has become significantly less racist as a society since the 1950s, and yet accusations of racism have only gotten worse. So clearly this system, this liberal system, neoliberal capitalist Zionist system is not working for black people. It's not working for white people. I've had conversations with prominent blacks about this, and they agree with me. Now show me what prominent blacks agree with Destiny and Vaush. The answer is zero. They don't have anyone. So one last thing, Martin Luther King, what did he say? Martin Luther King said very, very, very clearly, the white moderate, he's talking about white liberals, white moderate is the problem. I agree with him. These are the people that get in the way, and they disingenuously change the topic, or they make it about white guilt and things like that. We don't want to talk to these people anymore. Black people don't even like you. So give me a fucking break. Next one.
Okay.
You bet.
Do you mind if I take the floor, Destiny?
Yeah, you can go first. Go for it.
Yeah, okay. So I know that these are closing statements and they're not supposed to contain arguments, but even I am shocked by the irrelevance of especially Stryker's chosen end. God, where do I even begin? It's funny. It's funny that you would make jokes about us being liberals when your obsession with identity politics rivals that of the most inebriated wine moms. We wanted to debate black people. You're white. You're not a representative of the black community. Louis Farrakhan was loved by black people. How many black people have Destiny? And whatever it takes to soothe your wounds after coming here with no fucking arguments. At no point did Destiny and I make the argument that in this country there is a system of white people hurting black people or black people hurting white people, only that the systems within this country are biased largely against black people. The reason we point this out is because we want to ameliorate and address these problems. The reason we point this out is because we share the dreams of so many other black leaders throughout the history of this country, and I know neither of you give a single shit what black leaders in this country have historically pushed for, but I'll address that anyway. To see this country mended along its racial lines, whereas you would see it exacerbated and the faults attributed to, I suppose for you two it would be the Jews, but to others it would be other groups. Everything that I do is done out of a love, both of black people and of people of other races, and what's more, this is you in particular also, repeated insistence that we should not have to defer to the ivory tower to make our arguments is very telling, because if what you were saying was true, that a society run by black people would not be discriminated against black people, and vice versa with white people, there would be data on it. And there would be studies on it, because that would appeal to the liberal wine mom argument. Oh, if we just make the mayor black and the police chief black, then there won't be any racism against black people. They would get grants for that research, but you will not find research affirming that position. You don't dislike the ivory tower because it's elitist. You dislike it because you know it will trash your arguments time and time again. So, yeah, to that, you may have what you will. Destiny?
Just before I start this, I just want to say I do submit myself to third-party arbitration if a third party wants to go through my PayPal or bank statements. I didn't pay James or Eric to be here. I know that it might seem otherwise, but I swear to God I haven't, and I will submit myself to somebody else who want to verify that. Like Stryker, like you keep saying over and over again that like I'm talking to black separatist groups and they want to separate. Like, yeah, no fucking shit. Like if you're gonna cite like the Nation of Islam or Hoteps or even the new Black Panthers, who are all like black separatist groups as being people that want to separate from the United States, like congratulations. Like it's so funny that you guys will do this and then in the next breath cry that like they call every single conservative a neo-Nazi, they call every single blah 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 blah. Well, you're trying to say the Nation of Islam represents black America. How hilariously fucking stupid. And then to James, like his entire thing about how like, oh well, you can't talk about problems without talking about solutions. Of course you can. What the fuck kind of stupid ass shit is that? You have to identify problems before you can talk about any solutions. You can't talk about solutions and problems in the same breath. You don't even agree on what the fucking problem is, which was supposed to be what this conversation was about. It was a conversation conversation on what is the problem right now. Is there or is there not systemic racism? Instead, we totally moved off of that, and we've gone to this fantastic idea of creating separate but equal ethno-states, all while hilariously using fucking Martin Luther King and even Malcolm X, who later in his life realized that segregation was fucking stupid, as though these guys would be coming out in favor of your argument today is just so hilariously fucking stupid. And I think that it's perfect. I think it encapsulates your entire argument that you thought you could prove that by using single quotes by them, that you could prove that they were in favor of segregation, the same way that you try to use like a single stat or a single data point to prove some non-existent argument that you've attempted and failed horribly to make about systemic issues in the United States and the criminal justice system. That's all I got.
Destiny's like the guy whose tire blows out of the highway and then stands there looking at it like, well,
if I remember right, Destiny and Vaush get the closings because we let you guys start. We do have to go into the Q&A.
Okay.
To be fair. Right. Next, thanks for your questions. Jerkin asks, Reddit, they said, Reddit changed its hate speech policy to allow hate speech against, quote, the majority, unquote, i.e. white people. Why is being anti-white so good for business? I don't know if this is a sincere question now that I read it.
Can you find me anywhere in the Reddit TOS where they say they're encouraging anti-white discrimination? Find that for me and I'll answer it.
Yeah, well, this is what Spez said in the thread. This is part of their updated Rule 1 guidelines. Is that speech against minority groups, that is those that are not in the majority. I can find the exact quote for you. It's in the thread. But
well,
yeah, this is the new Reddit terms of service.
Then shouldn't you be pushing for a demographic replacement, because then whites will be a majority and they'll be protected on Reddit?
No, they won't. That's the fun. That's actually that's a good point. That whites, one would think, if the system, if all else were equal, that whites would be protected under civil rights law. But as we see, that is not the case. As we see, whites actually do not find ourselves protected by civil rights legislation. And
I'm sorry, can you be fired for being white?
Yes.
You can be fired for not saying Black Lives Matter. Actually, yes, you can.
Wait,
that's a political opinion. That's not a protected.
It's
that's not a protected class.
It's called affirmative action. That's why blacks are more likely to get a public sector.
Oh yeah, remember when you took those cases to the Supreme Court and you lost? Is there anything else you have?
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's exactly our point.
Just to get to the
that's exactly our point. No shit.
I think we can all agree.
The point was that racial bias didn't exist in the same way that you're
giving us our point and then snarkily laughing about it.
We need to
I like how you're pretending that I'm giving you your points when you guys spent the entire argument.
You said whites sued based on discrimination and lost in court. That's a symptom of an anti-white.
Yeah, and if you actually follow that court argument, they didn't make their case.
When it loses, it proves we were right all along.
The original super chat was challenging Destiny and Vaush, so to not gang up on them, I got to give them last word.
Oh yeah, and wait, if you want an actual answer, there's nothing anti-white about the policies there. The reason why some websites are more keen to protect against discrimination against minorities is because that type of discrimination tends to be a lot more harmful. You don't see like these gigantic
data.
Just short and sweet. I hate to be so pushy.
Oh yeah, sure. Because your question is dumb and it's not true. There, sorry.
Wolfgang D, thanks for your question. Said, what do Vaush and Destiny think about Malcolm X collaborating with ANP founder George Lincoln Rockwell to establish a mutually interested black separation plan?
He moved back on that later in his life. I disagree with that. I don't slavishly devote myself to the scripture of any figure. I think that, like many great men, Malcolm X had many good opinions and many bad, and I disagree with that one.
Next. Well, but the problem is there's more blacks praising Nazis than there are blacks praising white liberals. How do you explain that historically? Blacks approve of what the fuck you guys are doing.
What?
Show me a quote. You said I use anecdotes of great black leaders. Show me a quote of a black leader that says, I love white liberals. I think
why do black people overwhelmingly vote for white liberals?
I don't fucking know.
Yeah, look at race.
Why do white people vote for conservatives who are just as anti-white as the Democrats?
Wait. You do realize
seems like that argument fell apart real quick.
The vast majority of black people voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, right? Yes. Like this is completely untenable argument.
And they also voted for Biden over the far more progressive Bernie Sanders. How do you explain that, Vaush?
Wait, what does that have to do with Nazis?
Ah, there we go.
Wait, what does that have to do with Nazis?
Where did I go? How is that an argument?
Oh gosh,
is this where we draw out that you are pivoting?
We do have to.
Are you okay? Are you having a heat stroke?
Have to give Vaush and Destiny the last word just because it was directed to them.
Sorry.
Next, J.A. Kess. This is for both sides. So we get both sides, and maybe what we'll do is start with Vaush and Destiny, and then we'll kick it over to Stryker and also. So they asked, what do both sides of the debate feel about blacks having their own state with their own police? And do both sides agree that, this confuses me, agree that access to black people both in proximity and sexually is not a human right?
What?
Wait, what? Can you? Or go ahead.
That got
Can you
wacky
do that
at
again
the
though?
end.
When you
Sure. The first part, what do both sides of the debate feel about blacks having their own state with their own police? And then I don't know how separate this other question is. They said, do both sides agree that access to black people, both in proximity and sexually, is not a human right? I think they mean like if blacks and whites were separated into like geologically distant places.
I don't think you have a human right. I don't think people born in Minnesota have their human rights violated because there are no fucking black people around. I believe in like individual rights. I think that anybody should be able to move to or do whatever they want. But I think as soon as you start discriminating against other people based on their race, we have a problem. If you want to go ahead and if you're black and you want to move to some fucking African country because you want to live amongst black people, that's fine. Same with white people and wherever they want to move to. But if you start trying to keep other people from coming in based on their skin color, I think that's an issue.
An issue for who? For you?
Are you?
Black people want that?
That's actually
Do you know what
point,
ethics is?
Hold on,
like
that's
the
an interesting point
concept?
because we only see that you're talking about these two things as if they're equal, but we see in practice that they're not. There are not floods of whites moving.
This
is
completely irrelevant.
Areas.
We were just talking ethically.
You set this up as an example, so we need to address it. Ugh. There are not hordes of white people moving to black countries.
Not yet.
That's just not happening. Well, and it's not going to.
It'll happen.
Nicer.
It'll happen.
Because
just
white
you wait.
Are nicer. People don't want to live there.
Africa's
Why do we see
blowing
millions?
up right now, my dude? It's getting big. Pretty soon, your
millions?
grandkids are going to be running over to Uganda.
This is just ridiculous
stupid.
because what we see is
idiotic.
millions, in fact, millions of Africans moving into the West. They did a poll. I forget the
it was billions
that
actually
polled people in developing countries, and when they asked them where would they most like to live, the number 2 answers were Germany and the United States. And so, they were not saying other developing countries. Yeah, they want to live around white people.
They want to live in economically prosperous countries.
Is access to
white
people
countries.
right?
Eric, and also if you guys want to answer this question, you don't have to, but if you want, you can, and then we'll move on to the next one.
We agree with the first part of the question that blacks should be able to have their own states and police forces. I think Eric and I both agree on that. But the second question, is there some kind of right to black people and sexuality? No. And I would expand that to say there's also not a right, a human right, to access to white countries or to white resources or white civilization or white states or white people. So yeah, I would agree with that statement.
Gotcha.
I try so hard to actually just answer the questions. I feel like they have like a script they go off on every time they get the chance to, but
yeah, cry more.
Next.
There's a guy who reads abstracts off JSTOR. Thinks he's a genius.
Abstract is better than a single number. At
Being
least.
insulted for reading data. The state of white nationalism in 2020.
Yeah, seriously, you're literally like offended by studies.
No one's
fucking
wait a
hilarious.
second.
That's not fair. You read data.
That's not what I'm saying.
Exactly what you're saying.
That's exactly what you're saying.
I'm saying that you are citing sociology and shit like that is ideological. It's full of people like you.
Sorry, who else studies crime but sociologists? Would you want to find a physicist publishing data on it? What the fuck kind of?
I can find you.
He's asking for the last name of the people who published it. He's trying to find Goldstein's.
I can find you university studies from the People's Republic of China that prove race is real. The reason why is that Chinese universities don't have the same ideological problems American universities do, which are
well, if we were having a debate on whether or not race was real, it'd be really good to bring those studies up, I guess, huh?
I can show it to you right now. 2019, they mapped out.
Sorry, James, my friend.
Let's move on. All good? Great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Kunz, yeah.
Might as well have you moderate. Thanks. Sorry.
No, I just like you, man.
No. I'm teasing you. It's good.
And by the way, what people at home can't see, you are fucking yoked. Because I met you in person. You are massive, my dude.
We will get to the next one. So Osu, thanks for your question. Said, how can you support the police when they aid and abet the murderous family courts that separate fathers from their loving children on a daily basis? How can we stop the lib-fash family court judges?
Who's that for?
Who's that for?
I'm not exactly sure, to be honest.
Okay, the answer is that we can simultaneously recognize that there are problems within a system with the need to still support and reform the system. I mean, this is a stupid question. There's tons of problems with the police. That doesn't mean you get rid of them entirely or whatever. There can be tons of problems. If we were arguing ACAB, then that would have been a better debate to have, I guess.
Well, I'm just a humble progressive, okay? I'm joking.
Sure. And even if
I might actually be closer to Vaush on this question. I
guarantee you that however close you are to him, it is in a very strange way and probably for very fucking different
Please
reasons.
don't get close to me, sir.
Says the two fags. Okay.
Well, firstly,
Whoa!
I'm only half.
We're not gonna have that.
I would
okay.
I would like to clarify. Okay, I'm only half fag. Okay, so it's not fair that he keeps calling me gay.
True.
Okay, I have a
case.
wonderful girlfriend. Please.
Yeah.
And then number two, yeah,
do
just
all
because
of
you have a
us.
problem with a particular part, just because. I really want to make it personal, but I'm trying not to, Striker, because I know how much I can lose you.
Well,
Guys.
they consented to
listen,
being fucked by us during this debate, so I don't see what that has to do. Like, I don't know. Like, this seems like the clock killing the cuddle.
But anyway, yeah, you can recognize there's a problem with the system while still acknowledging other beneficial parts of it, or saying you need to reform the system as a whole. Yeah.
Next, appreciate your question. This one coming in from, want to remind folks, in the chat, we do not want spam. So please, folks, don't spam. Otherwise, we're getting more aggressive with it. We'll just ban you if you're spamming. It's annoying. And let's see, 2 seconds. I got a little bit behind on the questions here. Thanks for your question from Jimmy Neutron. For Striker, did you know, let's see. Gosh, okay. Some of these are next.
I bet.
Let's see. I think this is a sincere question. Gustavian, thanks for your question, said, I've heard some conflicting reports. Could Vaush please clarify his position on the destruction of the state of Israel?
Oh, are we trying to do the Red Brown Alliance here? Nah, I've been
ADL is listening.
I've been
Hold on.
critical. I've been
Careful.
critical of Israel in some pretty hyperbolic ways in the past. But obviously, I would trend ideally towards reform over some crazy, nuclear option.
Good. That's the right answer.
Jonathan approves.
Next up, Bob Dole, thanks for your question. For Stryker and James, do you feel that Patriot Front is the face of nationalists organizing in America? They've been heavily ramping up their activism and seem to not be burdened by the drama that plagued previous orgs.
I don't talk about activism. I mean, if that's the thing you want to do, go for it. I don't have any.
Yeah,
stance.
I have good relations with Patriot Front. They're good guys.
Next up, question for Stryker and Alsup. Why is your main evidence a policy that was only implemented to terrorize Black communities in stop and frisk for pot?
Well,
Well,
I mean,
it got a lot of guns off the street, and
No, it didn't.
Yeah.
Well, this is a question for us.
This is for us.
And it got a lot of guns off the street.
So you're
and
free to lie.
It was.
Oh,
It was,
they can't let you talk on this one. Go ahead.
No, it can't. And
You guys are interrupting each other right now.
Hold on.
we went through the data on this and demonstrated that this was a policy that helped reduce New York's homicide rate at a faster rate than the national average. So, I mean,
another thing about
this
the marijuana stuff, the problem with the marijuana studies, and this is disingenuous. It's a political ideology of American universities, which are private and rely on private grants from people with their own ideologies. Institutions are made up of people. And so what happens is they take 2 + 2 and make 5. And so you have a situation where Blacks are more likely to be charged with marijuana charges. That's true. But that's because they got some pot on them when they shoot another guy. That's why. It's very obvious.
and
Have any data on that?
The language.
Yes, I
on
actually do.
terror.
I will link it in the chat.
And one more thing, people who feel terrorized, this is actually just exactly what Stryker and I were saying, is that people may feel terrorized or unfairly infringed upon by the system. Black people might, but that is because this is a system, again, that was built by whites. And so if you feel terrorized or that it's unfair for you to be searched because you are more likely to be committing murder in this city, then that's an understandable objection you can have to the system. But this is how we're going to do things in the United States. So if you don't like that, that's fine. This just further evidence for the necessity of separate systems.
Just curious, you said that you did present the data on how many guns were found during stop and frisk. Did you actually? Did I miss that? How many guns were found for stop and frisk?
Demonstrated that stop and frisk and broken windows policing were helped New York City reduce their homicide rate.
That is not
faster
what he
than the
asked.
national average.
That's not what I asked. You don't actually have the. Oh, he's looking at his monitor right now, trying to find it. So I can tell you for some of those
Destiny,
numbers. So here, just a real quick one,
such
just
a
how
child.
effective these stops were. In 2012, the NYPD made some 532,000 stops. They found guns 715 times. That means that in less than 0.1% of all stops did they actually turn up any firearms. What a waste of our fucking money! If you want to
Do you
make
have any
safer.
studies that demonstrate that those people were not violent criminals?
What does that have to do with
Do you
anything?
have any
Also,
studies
how
proving
many
those people were not
whites did they
violent criminals?
catch with guns?
How many what?
What does
How
that
many
have to
white
do with
people
what
did
he
they
I'm
catch
said?
with guns?
I'm talking about how the efficaciousness of stop and frisk? If it's taking you 500,000 stops
based
to
on
find
race,
a few,
right?
Well,
The racial disparities in stop and frisk in terms of discrimination.
I don't think
We're
they
having
get
a
it.
hard time following what I'm
Destiny, I don't think they're
going
gonna
to
get it.
715 people. We're not going to use those guns in shootings
700 people, 700 lives could have been saved.
or more.
Is that
where's your
inconsequential?
study saying they weren't?
even if that was the case, don't you think maybe those 500,000 police stops could have been used in other ways? Like maybe, for instance, having background checks for private sellers for firearms. Maybe that could get more violent firearms off the street.
I mean, that was
then-
already in place in New York, anyways. But
Oh yeah, all across the entire country. Was that actually something
In
that was
New York
like
City,
a United States
Destiny.
one? Oh, I forgot. New York City was the only city that matters.
Which is
because
the
it's
city
the only
we're
one you guys
talking about.
prepared numbers for. Well, because you were talking specifically about stop and frisk, which is a New York City policy. You can smile all you
so
want, but
New
like
York City.
a policy that was implemented only in
This
New
is
York
ridiculous.
City doesn't
What are we
It's
even
ridiculous.
talking about right now?
Yeah, holy shit. The amount of bad faith is staggering.
You're talking about New York City. We respond with New York City, and you're saying, why are we talking about New York City? That's
Yeah.
the gist.
I'm
Because
of
the
saying that there
argument-
is any number.
Just move on to the next
background
question.
checks.
It's
There are
just
any
retarded.
number
All
of.
right,
There are any,
gentlemen,
I agree.
fucking
This is
retarded.
retarded. There are any
Moving.
number
We
of
do have to
policies
keep
we could
moving.
do that would probably be more financially viable than stop and frisk for taking.
Yeah,
guns off
the
street.
argument he was making is that there is a ubiquitous ineffectiveness to stop and frisk with regards to getting guns off the streets that could be
Where do
applied
they
to
have
better
stop and frisk?
purposes.
What
in,
city? What city? So why are you saying? Why are we talking about New York?
I
Well,
don't think.
We're
I don't
talking about
think,
New York because that's where stop and frisk.
I
is
don't
at.
think you can actually follow. Do you know what ubiquitous means?
Okay. Yeah. Whoa. Whoa. Of course not. No.
He didn't read that. That wasn't a word
Next.
used a lot in Shakespeare. So
That's a JSTOR word right there. He's not touching
that's
that
a J
one.
star word.
Oh,
Okay.
So I have to give because
Yeah.
that I think that super chat was originally directed at James and Eric. I got to give them the last word on that one, and then we got to go to the next one.
So
That was
point.
the one about stop and frisk.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think-
Well,
if
I just found something interesting here actually. February 2020, black police commissioner, black member of the not police commissioner, member of the Pennsylvania Board of Pardons, Brandon Flood, black guy, saying that he wants to implement stop and frisk in Pennsylvania to get illegal guns off the street. So, I mean, look, if we're gonna talk
That's
about
our
the black,
argument.
the
Hold on one
impact
second, we do have
on
one
black people in this country, maybe we should listen to actual blacks when they demand
one
stop
black
and
And
frisk.
back, and back
We
to
do
the
have to give
person
him-
to
I
the
have to give
person
him the
asking the
last word.
question. One last thing about the person asking the question who said this is a policy that terrorizes black people, which is fine.
Yeah.
Let's have different policies for different people then, in different
Next.
neighborhoods, of course.
just-
because of course,
Next.
Karen, when
If I
the
may,
reason, the
really quickly,
misunderstanding.
that
No, you
affirms
may
my
not.
point.
I've
The,
got to
reason, the
get.
reason,
Yeah,
the
we
reason
should-
why Karen
yeah.
calls the police when a black man is approaching her and threatening her is because Europeans and black people have a different concept of what a threat is, what danger is, and so on. And that
What?
may well be true.
What
Well,
the
that's what the
fuck?
misunderstandings with
Let's- hold
Karens
on,
are. So
hold
the
on, we
point
gotta
is,
get
the
him-
point is,
gotta give him the last
maybe
word.
Karen and that guy shouldn't be in the same area then.
Next. Brenton Langle, thanks for your question. Eric Stryker, you remember debating Brenton, right? He
Yeah.
says, I
He
lived
blocked
in
me, by the
Harlem.
way. Sorry.
I'm sure he'll forgive you and you guys will reunite. He says, I lived in Harlem for 10 years. There was gentrification, but it's still majority black and always perfectly safe. Stop and frisk was a monstrous policy. I don't know if they...
I'll tell something to Brenton, who I doubt is a native New Yorker. If you walk down the street in Harlem, there's a police officer on every corner. I don't know about right now at this moment. I haven't lived in New York in a bit, but there's a police officer on every corner. New York City has some of the most police officers per capita in the world. It has like a $6 or $7 billion police budget. So the reason why it's safe for Brenton Langle to walk through Harlem at night is because there's cops on every corner, and Brenton Langle, as an anarchist, wants to abolish the cops. And I say, honestly, personally, all those white liberals, all those Zionists that live in Bushwick, that live in these hipsters that live in Bushwick and Williamsburg and Harlem, you know what? I would say the cops should pull out and let them see what the world they want looks like.
Next
Okay.
question 4. This is a Google user said, what do you all, both parties, have to say regarding Asian people and their place in broader racial discourse? It seems like they're always completely overlooked when it comes to discussions like this.
Yeah, Asian people are in a really unique position because there are a lot of the Asian representation we have in this country are either very wealthy immigrants or the children of wealthy immigrants who come here for economic or for educational opportunities, which means that they are in some respects a social minority, but in certain educational and economic senses actually disproportionately powerful. I think the reason why they aren't talked about as much is actually just because their situation is so complicated. And to be honest, it's something that I would need to look more into before I felt comfortable making any strong statements.
Gotcha. Thanks so much.
So I'll say this about Asian people. Asian people are
Wait, was
largely
this our
invisible.
question?
No, it's for everyone.
Oh fuck.
Asian people are largely invisible in our society. That's true. And they don't really have anyone pandering to them or anything because they don't really have that many grievances in terms of a day-to-day basis, which is whatever. They just mind their own business. What I'd say though is that in general, I think we need a discussion with all the races at the table, including Asians, about what's going on with this country. Basically everyone agrees, maybe not the two debating opponents, but everyone agrees that America is broken. America's a declining empire, and there's a lot of things going on.
Socialist. You don't think I think America is broken?
You sound like a liberal, so I don't know. But anyway,
you're the one who's super
you sound like a
obsessed with
Biden liberal.
We haven't
I don't
talked
know
about
anything about you.
Do you even know what? Wait, what does a liberal mean to you?
He doesn't know.
A liberal is a person that believes in individual maximalism as a value. Okay, that's their political
Where
value.
the fuck? Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. Wait, hold on. I'm curious.
What
did
Vaush
Vaush
did say
this
earlier
debate
that he
made you-
believes in individual liberty and maximizing egalitarianism. So yeah, I mean, you did actually.
Yeah. Is that what you guys believe?
In a classical liberal sense, but most Americans would also.
You're a liberal.
Wait, you said it. Wait, you
All
said
right, never
most
mind. Let's go to the
Americans would
next
agree this
question.
country is broken.
Or
So most of
Destiny
America
can
is
also
liberal?
answer the question about Asians. Anyway, Destiny,
Wait,
go
is
ahead.
most of America liberal? What is most of America? If most of America agrees America is broken, but liberals don't think America is broken, wouldn't a liberal recognize that there are systemic injustices in America, which would lead them
Have
to
you
believe
seen
America is broken?
the approval rate for Congress? It's
Give
12%.
it to another question. It's
12% approves of Congress.
Always a new question.
Anything from Destiny. If you had a point, Destiny, I'll give you a shot to.
I don't even know. Statements you're making are inconsistent with themselves. And then also what Vaush brought up before, like Chinese people represent like the second largest immigrant group in the country. Like tons of Chinese people that come over here from China. Like, of course, if you've got the money to immigrate halfway around the fucking world and then come to another place for opportunities in education and shit, you're going to be like massively represented in higher portions of the population and
like
have no big
Nigerians.
problems. But also the fact that like, do you want to pretend that like Asian people haven't had problems in the history of America? I mean, we literally had internment camps here.
No one's even arguing that.
I do appreciate the fact that you said I must not think America is broken because I'm a liberal, but it was my inclination towards liberal values, such as a pursuit of justice and equality, that led me to make the argument that America is broken in this debate.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
So the point is that like Nigerians are also more successful economically than whites, and they're black, and we can't just go on forever. And the reason is that I'll say this: Nigerians that immigrate to America come from they're the high class of Nigeria.
What are you talking about?
Oh, okay. Go look up when you get a chance.
No, I know, but we were talking
wealthiest
about
ethnic
Asian
groups
immigrants.
are.
What are we?
The point is, this is a question that also has immigrants in general, right? Let's talk about immigrants in general. This basically what's going on here is that you guys claim America is this country or whatever, and black people do just fine if they're from Nigeria. That totally destroys your point. But that's a very 1.0 like basic point. So let's just move on.
Well, if I could just say one thing about Asians real quick, I think that the impact of Asian immigration on Native American workers, Native American being Americans, not Indian Americans, but Native born Americans, is actually vastly under discussed. And the majority of those immigrants, Chinese immigrants specifically that you're talking about, are EB-5 immigrants, which is a special visa class where people have to, I think, put either $500,000 or $1 million into effectively a holding company in the U.S. And are given a green card. It's essentially a buying citizenship scheme that Donald Trump has actually worked to expand. So, yeah, I think we in the discussion about immigration, which is a topic for another time, the Asian impact on American workers is actually vastly under discussed.
Next, let's see. Colin Wood. And Vaush and Destiny, you might not grant everything in the question. I'm not sure, but they said, given that African Americans are more likely to commit crime, why should we not assume that they're more likely to be unfit jurors?
Oh my God, Destiny, do you want to take like the 8 answers to that, or?
So because black people are more likely to commit crime, we have like an entire vetting process for jurors, and also whether or not you've committed a crime. I don't even know what type of juries that factors into. Like, just because some group might have a higher proclivity towards something else doesn't mean that you can't like interview said group and screen out like bad applicants or whatever for whether it's a job or a jury selection or anything else. Like, I don't
who was the highest predisposition towards violent crime? Men, by an unfathomable margin. So if we want to go down that line, we don't want men in juries, obviously, because they're too irrational and angry. We don't want them as judges. We don't want them as politicians because they're clearly not capable of controlling themselves. Like ultimately, the point of processes like judicial review or of literally any job hiring process or of elections is to suss out whether or not a person is a legitimate candidate for that position. And in the case of that judicial striking, that study that I mentioned, they accounted for factors such as that, criminality, economic background, what have you, which means the only thing remaining was racial bias.
Yeah, if you really wanted to be biased in a system and get rid of like all the bad applicants, and you would focus on age and you'd focus on sex. So like young people between the ages of probably like 14 and 32 or whatever, and then men. If you get rid of that, you like 99% of like violent offenders are in that group right there.
What about blacks?
But you don't need to. We don't even.
So you can stereotype
Being
men,
black's
but
a
not
better
blacks.
Wait, black women don't.
I'm not saying. First of all, no.
characteristic-
If you want a predictor for violent crime, going with men, getting rid of all men is going to be way
What
better
about
than getting rid
blacks?
of all blacks.
Wait, but black women don't like commit much crime. They're really
What?
not that.
violent crime compared to like young white men? No.
Yeah.
Compared to white women.
Yeah, when you control for
We're not comparing
economic
to white
factors.
women.
No, not
Wait,
that.
wait. When you can, yes, when you control for stuff like
no.
poverty, the very basic tier 1 stuff a criminologist would learn in their
It's been
sleep.
proven
Yes.
that poor white people commit less crime than
No.
middle-class black people.
Yep.
That's been proven
Wait,
time and time
what?
again. I'll drag this study up for it.
Wait,
You
is
mean
this
the image from that JonTron debate? The one
Is
image
it the
from the one
JonTron?
city?
Yeah. That wasn't a real.
Well, that's not an argument. So
Wait, it wasn't real
But it's a
data.
study.
I don't know.
No,
who
it
the fuck
wasn't.
John
It was an
Trump is.
out
I
of
don't care.
context graph that was made by lying about the sources of the data and
Alright.
pulling together a bunch of different
I will
supposed
put it-
correlations with no
James,
understanding.
James, the moderator can
Let's see.
You might
can-
as well
can
just
approve
draw a graph in MS
the
Paint
study.
and be
Hold on.
like, here we go.
Okay, so we'll give Vaush and Destiny last word on that one. Brendan
yeah.
Lingle.
Also- Oh, yeah. Wait, you said, last word. Oh, real quick. I just wanted to address something earlier. James mentioned the fact that the majority of Chinese immigrants are EB-5 immigrants. That's not true. Apparently, there's less than 7,000 of those people that have those EB-5 immigration things, those visas, compared to in 2017 alone, we had 2.9 million Chinese immigrants. So unless you were
That's
trying
about 50%, I'd say.
Next up, Brenton Langle, thanks for your question, said the Washington State study proves cops hesitate, quote, when they know they're being watched, unquote, and white is easier to see, so it would speed reaction time in a lab.
Ooh, something that was really funny that we didn't even get to talk about. One of the largest analyses of over 100 million stops in the United States showed that black people were less likely to be racially profiled after dark, when it's harder to determine if there's a white person or a black person driving the car. I thought that was very interesting. Over 100 million stops they analyzed.
Oh, yeah. Wait,
Let's give,
it's
hold
also-
on one sec. Hold on.
After sundown, the
I do want to give
disparity
Stryker and Allsup a
drops.
chance, though. I want to give, but I want to give Stryker and Allsup,
Yes.
I'll give you a chance to respond to both Destiny's point and the super chat.
Hold on a
Yeah,
second.
when
I
it's-
was
hold on, when
digging up
it's-
the study, this study that shows that poor whites are less likely to be charged with serious crimes and go to prison than wealthy blacks. So I would tell you to look at that.
Yeah,
Did
well,
you
this
link it?
idea that when it's dark out, people they're less likely to be profiled.
Right.
To be stopped, to be what is the argument here?
That racial disparities in between stopping rates between white people and black people tends to go down once it gets later on in the night. That way you control for time of stop, which makes it seem like people might be profiling each other based just on how they look rather than any other factor related to a stop.
Yeah, I mean it's also harder to see things like what are common reasons for stops, like vehicle equipment issues, right? Which is a common reason for stop. These are things that are harder to see. So yeah, I'm not.
So why would the
buying that.
disparity go down?
The disparity in race?
Yeah. You would
Yeah,
expect it to
Sorry.
you'd expect it to be the same unless
What's
you
his
think that
point? That black people and white people, there's less disparity at night.
That the
in
cops
terms of-
are
Yes.
racially profiling. That the disparity goes down after you can't determine the race of the driver.
Also, I'm super curious what goes on
Are
with
you
your
saying
car
that
that's
you
harder
can't
to see at
see-
night. Like
are you
tail
can't-
lights
are you-
going
are you
out are
saying-
harder to notice at night than in the
Are
day.
you saying that what's your argument that white cops can't see black people at night? What
Wait,
Harder
wait,
to
wait,
see
wait,
at
wait,
night.
wait. Why do you keep specifying the race of the cops? We've never made that claim.
Because that's what the actual controversy going on is.
No, it's
I want to
not.
give James a chance to respond.
Yeah, no,
think you were
I
making-
the idea that it's more difficult to see a black person at night. These things are. I
Wait,
mean,
do you think that's not true? Hold on. No, wait. Do you think that's not true? Do you think it's equally easy to see a white person or a black person at night?
Well,
I'm
what if
saying
they
they're-
smile at you? You can
Well,
see
you
their
can't.
teeth,
Well, you
right?
can't discern their race in the
We have
dark.
Stryker,
No,
our
I-
expert identitarian here, that's more obsessed with identity politics than any gay white liberal I've ever met in my entire life. Holy
That's
shit!
because
you
the
wanna throw
left
Idpol into
stole
fucking
identity politics
everything.
from the right. I'm not a conservative. I'm an
Well,
identitarian.
damn, at least you admit that
The
Idpol is
left
the foundation
stole
for every
identity
Hey, you sound like a
politics from the
liberal to me,
Nazis.
buddy.
Wait, but I
And I'm proud of
just
that.
want it on the
One second.
record for my two probably fucking race realists in the argument, which is the funniest part here. Are you guys going to tell me that it's just as easy at night to discern race in a car between a white person and a black person?
No,
as
I'm
it is
saying
a legit-
I'm saying that obsessing over the race in the
I'm not
case of
obsessing over
a
it.
police stop.
They
no,
can't
I mean, you're
answer.
making
They
a
have to-
asking. Wait,
you're
James,
making
can
a
you, wait, hold on.
central
I
crux of
actually,
your argument.
I'm filibustering this entire debate until James Alsop answers that question. Is it just as easy to see a black and a white person at night in a car
I'm
as it
saying
would
that
be
if we're
during the day?
talking, I'm saying that if we're talking about police stops, there are so many different factors that go into the decision
He
to
can't
stop
answer.
someone.
Okay, wait. That's one. I'm going to ask one more time, okay? Is it just as
Yeah,
easy
you don't
at night?
get paternal with me, Destiny. Like this idea, and again, you guys do this thing where you get this study, and you expect us to take it at face value that you are one accurately representing the data,
Just
two
asking you a
not
question.
editorializing. No, because you guys are bringing up these studies that we have not seen, right? So we have no way of verifying whether what you're saying is true or not. So I'm not going to
We're asking
respond
you a
to your
hypothetical.
Okay, I'm going to ask
Their,
a third
their
one. I'm
argument
asking
is
a third
that you
question.
can't
Okay,
see
ask it one
black
time.
people at
Can
night.
you see? Yeah, can you see the difference between a black and a white person in a car at night just as easy as you can during the day, or is it a little bit harder at night?
Does your car disappear too? Like,
with
give me
what?
one.
You have a headlight. I mean, yes, you can see people, and I mean, this idea.
Okay, I'm going to ask a
secondly,
fourth time. Can you tell the difference at night just as easily between a black or a white person driving a car?
when you're driving behind. Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, cool. That's all I want to hear.
Okay, that's all right. All right, that's yeah. We got what we can out of that.
Next, thanks for your question. By the way, do want to remind everybody the links of the speakers are in the description in case you did not know that. And next, we have a question from Rodney Thalberg asks, to all the speakers, why should lay people accept what you say on these topics? You all act like you are experts, but none of you are experts. Let's see. None of you have done professional studies, aren't economists, historians, or experts in any way.
Well, as part of getting my degree in sociology, I actually had to learn the exact same statistical inference skills that are necessary to participate in the multivariate regressive analyses that we usually use to determine and isolate certain social factors. So I don't have like an MA or anything, but I would argue pretty confidently that I do have some degree of, familiarity with this. But if you want, you don't need a degree to understand any of these studies. If you go into the methodology, the actual math they use, it gets pretty complicated. Some of it's above my pay grade as well. But when it comes to actually understanding, the arguments being made, it's pretty easy to do. And nothing that Destiny and I have done here has deviated at all from very simple, very commonly held criminological perspectives on the criminal justice system. We haven't done any wacky, high IQ 4D chess shit for this.
Yeah, I would also like to say that the fact that you are not familiar with any of these studies is really disappointing. These are page one JSTOR, Google, fucking academic, whatever bullshit you want to look up. These are the first things that come up. It seems like you would have a prepared response to at least the easiest data to find. None of these are super buried or super difficult. These are all the mainstream, widespread academic point of view. I mean, at least also I can respect that you tried to say that all of academia is fake to try to get off of it, since you knew that you couldn't kind of.
No, you're mischaracterizing me again, Dusty. That's not what I'm saying. What you are doing, and this actually speaks to the questioner here, is that not only are people, the audience, being expected to believe their characterizations of studies at face value, which is in and of itself a problem. Secondly, we are being held to their characterizations of a study that hasn't been verified. We have not verified or seen these. So the idea that reality as you present it, as you distill from a study you select, is more valid than the factual. I mean, you like to say that studies are only valid, and that crime statistics aren't valid. No, I mean, these crime statistics, these are from the FBI, these are from New York City. Regardless of what we're talking about, all of these statistics we have presented are you can look them up. Right?
A crime statistic.
Your
Maybe I can use
your characterization of a study. That's your interpretation.
Well, also,
maybe it'd be easier.
Let me jump in here on sociology as a fucking discipline.
Yeah, I know. It's the Jews, brother. They're all over the place.
Go look up Alan Sokal.
Particularly
Sokal. Sociology.
We shouldn't have to look him up. You should have done it for this debate. That was your job.
Sociology is a fake science. People are academics, real academics, are constantly laughing because they send in bogus studies and they always publish them in their journals. Sociology is a load of horseshit. It's Marxism.
To move on, unless if
Well,
it's
I
an
just want
answer
a
for the
helpful
actual
analogy
question.
for the audience. So studies are like meals, okay? That's what we're asking. You're giving us single ingredients, okay? To say that a stat and a study are the same thing just isn't how any of this
hungry.
works. Studies incorporate wide varieties of stats into what they into their entire project,
and then add their ideology to it, so that 2 + 2 equals 5.
I just want to say
that's
that
what
add an
sociology
ideology.
studies
I mean, like
are.
in the absence,
when you say add an ideology, I mean every study is done with some end in mind.
Wait,
I mean,
we don't
unless you want to
even
go like
have to-
really deep.
So-
Maybe James here can have a conversation on instrumentalism
In
or something.
the
If you want to talk about
absence-
like the philosophy of doing this.
in the
if I
absence
came
of
out-
any,
All right, we must
So
move on to the next one, guys.
can a person
move
who's
on to
a
the
race
next one.
realist be an academic nowadays?
yeah, I just
We're
wait,
going
wait, hold on. I
to
just
move-
want
Or do
with
they get
one
fired?
sentence, if I may.
So if my
So-
opinion gets you fired from academia, then how am I supposed to have the
Really
the
quickly,
so-called
How
really
can we talk about physics when they're firing
This
all the flat
question,
earthers?
this,
Oh no!
I'm gonna. Okay, Destiny has the last word on this
Sorry,
one.
I'm
We're moving
sorry.
to the
May I?
next one. We
'Cause
have to do that.
my
I have
discipline
to,
was
we have
attacked.
to keep going.
My discipline was attacked. I'm hurt.
If you had got a chance to respond to it, I'll give you a quick response.
one
just because it
sentence,
was-
without evidence that a study's methodology is flawed, claiming it is flawed is the definition of feels over reals. That's
we
it.
showed you all kinds of studies and you guys just ignored them.
All kinds.
So, all kinds
Next
of data,
up,
all kinds of
thanks,
studies. You guys just
SH. Thanks for
brush them
your question. Said bad moderation. Appreciate that. We keep
Not
our
true.
critics close though, so leave them alone, mods. And I appreciate the accountability. Manchester Police. Thanks for your question. Said systematic systems that govern everything from jury bias to politicians' choices are not able to affect academic studies. The systematic powers of Whitey cannot enter the university door.
What? I don't think that was an argument. So
Yeah, I'm
you
not
can
sure.
probably move to the next one if you'd like to.
Next up, I didn't understand it. Let's see. Quote, Brady Costins, thanks for your question, says, color of crime, quote unquote, there is little bias because victim surveys show that the color of the criminal in a violent act and the federal data is a close. A close?
It is close. I think he means it's close.
close.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that is well established. And I think they actually conceded that point very early on that blacks do commit more crime than whites at a extremely disproportionate rate. But to answer, I think what that previous super chatter was getting at in terms of bias in academia. I mean, this is something that is worth discussing.
Let's. I don't know if I want to. This one might go for a long time.
But the specificities, right?
It was.
Also, nobody
like,
conceded that point. It
to-
was never debated. It was never.
I don't remember
talked
talking
about.
Oh, no,
It
you
wasn't there to be
guys,
conceded.
I do remember you did
We-
admit that blacks commit more
we
crime than
can.
whites.
yeah, they did
Yeah,
admit
but
that.
We're not conceding or admitting that. That's like a fact that we all agree on. It's like
Yeah,
it's not a
good.
concession.
What
Like, do
you're-
you
what
think
you-
the
what
sun
you're
is out in
arguing-
the day?
What you're
Like,
arguing is
oh,
that
it is.
black
You
people-
conceded that. Like,
black people commit more crime, but somehow the fact
Next.
that they go to prison at higher rates and have all these issues with
I
juries,
feel the
all
same way
that
about
stuff is
men. Men
racism.
commit more crime, but they
Striker,
also
look
get
up the
worse
word
sentences.
disproportionate. It'll help you for your next debate. Okay.
Yeah.
Next up, Matthew Steele. Thanks for your question. This is for Stryker and Allsup. Asked, do you think the most important ideal virtue in the U.S. is improving human life or making money? And definitely have to give them the last word on this. Go ahead, Allsup and Eric.
I'll say it's very clear. It's about improving the human condition and human life. It's not about money. Money.
No.
Some people say time is money, but I say money is time. People need more leisure time. They need workers' rights. We need to fight for the working people, especially the white working people who are under siege from both the right and the left. That's why you should fucking join with us if you're in that situation.
You a centrist?
You are hated for your race, and additionally, you have no rights because of your class. So this is something that we believe. We're not conservatives. We are nationalists, and we are third positionists. So fuck the
Gotcha.
communists and fuck the capitalists.
Next, John L1319, appreciate your question, said, can you ask who the white leaders are since us black people always need to be led? This is to the nationalist guys.
How about Louis Farrakhan? How about various historical figures? I mean, is Louis Farrakhan a black community leader?
I mean,
what's the
next-
answer to that?
not
I have to give.
really?
I have to keep. To be fair, I have to give them the last word. Mecha Wing Zero. Thanks for your question for both sides. Asking, do you believe the criminal justice system is sexist due to the overwhelming majority of arrests being men?
Yeah, well, Yeah. Oh, yeah,
I'm pretty
yeah.
sure that's been proven. Actually, we might even have that in our own data that when you control for all other factors, past convictions, criminal history, all of that stuff, that men do receive worse sentences, especially when it comes, I think, from departure from the guidelines than women do.
Yeah,
I don't think
way
it's
worse. Like judges, because they think men are more threatening, which you could argue they are, but obviously the disproportionate representation bears out. Yeah.
Just like with blacks.
Oh, just like with blacks, it's disproportionate.
Disproportionate
Thanks.
bias.
He agreed again. That's all funny. You guys are on board.
Blacks are
awesome.
disproportionately
Another
put in
concession.
prison because they're disproportionately violent, just like men are.
Wait, that
End of
statement was
story.
actually
End of
correct.
debate.
They
Close
are
the book.
disproportionately violent. That is true. They're also
Okay,
disproportionately
thank you.
put in.
That's it.
They're also disproportionately
over.
put in prison.
Wait,
cool.
just
But
to
we're not arguing
clarify.
about whether they're disproportionately violent. We're arguing whether they're
So these
disproportionately put
guys
in
are
prison.
arguing the Jared Taylor position. Which
We're
is
arguing like the
funny.
position that was listed in the
Ah,
email. Maybe your caretaker should have read it to you a few more
Destiny
times so you knew what we were
Taylor.
talking about coming
Destiny
into this.
Taylor over here. All right.
Next, Mecha Wings. Well, we got that one. Rugal Migdal quotes Vaush saying, "If blacks move to Africa to be among blacks, that's fine. Same with whites and wherever they want to move to," unquote. So Africa for Africans confirmed?
No, everywhere for whoever wants to go there. I don't.
Who makes that decision?
Oh, wait.
Different countries have control of their own immigration policy.
But we're arguing broadly what my ethical principle is. And what I'm saying is, I think it's nice when individuals get to move to whatever part of the world they'd like to move in. We get one life, there's one planet, there are a lot of beautiful things to see, beautiful people to meet. I think it's nice that people should be able to travel the world, experience what they wish to experience. Yeah, that's something
There's a Gallup poll 3 years ago that shows
those?
that not a single country in the world has a majority that supports open borders.
Damn,
So
and
you have
not a
very
single.
marginal
Whoa,
opinion.
Are you kidding? Oh, not a single country in the world
Not a
is
single majority, not a single majority in the world.
You've hit it. You've hit it.
Supports open borders. The capitals support open borders.
It's almost like
as you like to quote Cato Institute studies on immigration.
Why are we?
Yes, the
Why are
capitals
we
support
allowing
it.
him to just completely? Wait, it's almost like I'm an anarchist, and there are no giant anarchist anarcho-syndicalist unions across the country.
Anarchism
It's almost like
is
I
just a
have
bourgeois-
political. It's
is a
almost like I have
bourgeois
political
position.
ideals
It's for mentally ill people
that
like you.
haven't happened yet.
Well,
That's what anarchism is. It's a philosophy for mentally ill rich kids.
If I could
That's
jump in here.
why
You've been
have
very
no
stable this
popular
debate. You've been
support.
putting your best foot forward for Europe.
have
You're
my
not
dude.
making a good argument for
popular
your standing. I
support.
think even
We
Allsup
have the
is over there
support. People
regretting
want
this
closed
decision to debate
borders
with you.
all over the world.
Yeah, if I was
We're the
Allsup, I'd be
opinion.
pretty mad I got paired up with you, to be honest.
No,
Next
I mean
up,
that
I
type
do
of
have to
DNC is
give.
not going
I
to
do
work.
have to give. To be fair, I've got to give. At some point, I've got to give Vaush the last word because it was an objection toward him.
Well, if I could make a statement on this, I think it is very interesting that the anarchist position on open borders and open migration is the exact same as global capital. That should tell you something. Secondly, Vaush's position on the ethics of open migration, free movement of people does not hold any regard for the will of the people in the countries that are being immigrated to. Right? It places a lot of
since I'm getting the last
importance
word here,
on the desire of the desires of the people from the third world. But it doesn't take into account the wishes of the people, say in Europe or say in the United States, who time and time again in polling express that they are opposed to immigration. They've had
blacks
enough
in South
of
Africa don't
immigration.
want
Yeah,
lots of bodies immigrated to their country.
several things. First of all, what he just said is untrue vis-a-vis immigration data. It's more complicated than he's making it out to be. Second of all, I'm pretty sure that capitalists don't generally support the abolition of private property. Maybe they've changed that. Maybe Goldman Sachs is pushing for that.
Free movement of people.
And third of all, when I'm making moral
moving people?
prescriptions,
Same
I can
position.
make them with regards to the fact that there are people in different countries who disagree with me. For example, I don't think that raping and enslaving women is okay. But the people in Saudi Arabia probably have some different views on me with regards to that particular gendered interaction. And to have somebody say, well, that's not very nice to the Saudi Arabian people, it doesn't really land home with me. My moral principles exist opposite whatever weird demographic polling I can bring up to justify any
Who the fuck are you to
conceivable
tell
argument.
Saudis how to live?
Next, we got to give him
Who
the
the fuck
last
are you?
word. Next,
you, a
Balthazar,
white
thanks to
savior?
your question, said to all four, do you love black people?
Well, yes, if I could take this first, and I think
love
that what
black
we are
people.
doing,
You'll need
the
one
position that
sentence.
They
Stryker-
have the real compassionate position towards black
well,
people,
the
actually.
position that Stryker and I are advocating for actually gives agency to blacks and to others. And what Vaush just said right there is actually very illuminating. In that he is attempting to enforce his morality, his liberal. Vaush, you got to stop being a child.
Liberal
here.
colonialism.
He's attempting to, to impart his liberal colonialist mindset on everyone across the world, on Saudi Arabians, on blacks. He's attempting to ascribe his own liberal values onto these other people. This is a very important point, and it speaks to
this has
why
nothing to do with loving black people.
Yes, it does, because it speaks to why you, despite claiming that there is institutional bias and racism in this system, then pivot away and run away from the discussion of what to do about it, and are afraid of the answer that would remove the possibility of white oppression or white bias from impacting blacks, which is having two separate systems, right?
But
so you are, it's liberal colonialism at its finest.
What Saudi Arabians do in Saudi Arabia is
do you love black people?
They don't love black people. That's their crippling flaw. That's their
you want to control black people.
Heroic weakness.
You want to
they don't love black people. That's how it is.
Make fun of them like you do with Jesse Lee Peterson. That's another thing.
Making fun of one
you love to make fun of your coon. That's what
you
love to do.
All right,
that's what you guys like.
You were the one earlier that claimed you had token figures. You literally treat
him like some kind of circus animal.
For real, we're not gonna get the channel in trouble. Don't say anything like that again.
I don't think they. I
meant it in a certain context, though. I meant it in a certain context.
He was using the mean version of
this. Is like, don't do it again.
All right.
So next one. Appreciate your question. This one comes in from the Red Elephants. Said. Let's see. God. They said blacks are more likely to be charged longer for drugs because they're more likely to sell in the open and more likely to have a previous criminal history. There are many studies that conclude this.
Okay, yeah. So
shouldn't he have linked one? I'm sorry. Hold on. I hear this talking about so many times. All these researchers do all of these studies on all of this crime-related stuff, and you think that none of them, not a single one, thought, I wonder if past convictions might have been the difference here. Nobody controlled for that. They clearly do. They explicitly do in every study that Vaush and I have brought to this conversation. The fact that you think you've got some massive gotcha by asking one of literally the most obvious fucking questions of all time, I think is very telling of your position.
Yeah, I also want to say that I've looked over these data points specifically, and while it is true that there are corollary factors like black people are more likely to sell in the open and black people are more likely to smoke marijuana in public rather than in private, these statistical factors accounted for a very small percentage deviation from their actual arrest rate, whereas they're arrested 4 times as often. So you can't just prove like this is a correlative factor, that's a correlative factor. You have to prove it accounts for a 4 times discrepancy, which in the case of that data, and I know because I've looked at those studies, it most certainly does not.
Okay. Next up, thanks for your, forgive me, did we get a response from both sides? Or wait, that was targeting Destiny. Vaush. We'll give him the last word on that one. Matthew Steele, thanks for your question. Striker and also said, do you think that if Black Lives Matter protesters carried AR-15s while they peacefully protested, that their Second Amendment rights would be respected by police?
Yes, this happened last month where Black Lives Matter, I don't know if they were officially BLM, but a group of armed black protesters escorted on state property, by the way, and I believe it was Michigan. They had an armed demonstration, and they were unmolested by law enforcement.
Right. And also,
data.
Like, the new Black Panthers.
Data. Oh my God! Do you need a study to prove
Black Panthers,
what you're seeing in front of your eyes?
The new Black Panthers have armed demonstrations all the time, and they're not fucking stopped by the police. So, I mean, the new Black Panthers are actually considered by Zionist groups to be a hate group, quote unquote, by the ADL. So they're allowed to carry their guns in public.
The BLM group you're referring to is actually a group of paid actors who are evoking the aesthetic of BLM. They did a big apology tour on Twitter for it because they were doing stolen valor.
Mr.
I need a study for that.
How about for data? How about the fact that I like you bring up the Black Panthers when it comes to weapons control, when the only time the NRA historically supported more gun control was when the Black Panthers were marching in the 60s.
No. There are other factors, bro. There are other factors, bro.
The NRA currently supports increased gun control in terms of background checks and bump stocks. So that's a lie.
Right.
Wait, generally, they passed massive gun control legislation.
Not the type of gun control
Ronald Reagan, the pro-gun president as a governor in California, passed gun control legislation.
No, you're wrong. I mean, you're wrong. The NRA currently supports increased gun control in terms of universal background checks and bump stocks, which
then
they
the argument would be that they
ago.
supported disproportionate gun control with regards to BLM.
Yeah, but that's not the argument you made. What you exactly said was the only time they supported gun control was when it was
that's what Destiny said. Do all white people look the same to you?
Oh, okay. Well, black people,
that's what I thought.
like the NRA is obsessed with having black spokesmen and black members and all that stuff. They also support like expanding gun rights to minorities, and they have programs dedicated to that. That's the NRA. So this is just a ridiculous, like, made up.
Well, we'd have to find some data on it, then talk about that.
Okay, yeah. How about go on the NR website and look up all the black people they have fucking at their.
They put black people on their website. There can't be any racial bias.
Well, it clearly shows that they at least aren't against black people having guns, as long as it's legal. The problem is that
maybe they're okay with black conservatives having guns, but they weren't okay with black socialists having guns.
I think you might be confusing that for how the FBI and the police were investigating Shahamish, where the white people came out.
What are you talking? Wait. What are you talking about?
From black rioters, you might be confusing it for
that. Do you think saying I think you might be talking about is this like a gateway to a non sequitur?
They harass white people. Having a gun in this country as a white man with an opinion is basically demanding that the government come after.
Wait, I have a gun, multiple guns, and I have very strong.
But you support the system, though. That's the difference.
By being anti-capitalist.
Wait, is he an anarchist or whatever? Or is he a
anarchist? He is a capitalist. He is a capitalist who pretends to be a communist.
This is the same. It's the same Nazbil argument every time. Even if you're anti-capital, anti-private property, anti-everything, if you support immigration, it automatically makes you a capitalist. They don't give a fuck about class issues. They care about race.
You and the Cato Institute have the same opinion on it.
The original question. So the original question, though, I can give you the last word if you'd like to. Which that original question was from Matthew Steele asking about black protesters or BLM protesters with their AR-15s. And it sounds like you said that you think that they would be respected by police if you filter that.
One last thing. Do you think if white people were rioting, burning down cities, killing people, shooting police officers, do you really think it would be allowed to go on? Oh, you didn't
wait,
see
how
that
long? Wait, wasn't it in Oregon?
Two federal police shot by BLM in Los Angeles.
Was there a group of white people?
If a group of white people were behaving that way, they would put the army on the streets.
Remember,
and we know this to be true because we saw this with Charlottesville.
And you're wrong. What are you talking about?
Charlottesville?
Where were the
What do you know
Bundys
about Charlottesville?
Where were the
Do you know who started the riots? Do you know who started?
We're not interested in your Charlottesville conspiracy theories, dude.
Just hold on. Okay, I've got everybody on mute. Just to reset for a second. Okay, so that last question was
Jay, I'm so
AR-15s.
Sorry.
It's okay. I appreciate everybody's passion. So we're just coming back to it now. The AR-15s, Black Lives Matter. If they were carrying the AR-15s, I think we got way past that. We're on something totally new now.
I think black people should be able to have guns. It's cool. Black Panther Party was cool. Yeah, my answer.
Next, the question though originally for Stryker and also, if you guys want, the last word is yours.
Yeah, I think you can look at the treatment of white peaceful political protesters, and you will see exactly, and you will see that the agitation, in the case of Charlottesville being a great example, agitation came from the left. It came from Antifa, and what was the end result of that? It was dozens, I think, with Ram and everyone else.
What
dozens
does this have to do with the question?
We're answering the question.
We are comparing apples to apples here. When white people went to peacefully demonstrate, we got cracked down by both the local cops and the anarchists, and there was a Black Lives Matter contingent there. None of them went to prison.
This is just like
a lot of white nationalists.
And when BLM protests today, the National Guard was called. Congratulations! Like I don't know what point you're trying to say.
And how many arrests were made?
Our dear moderator asks a simple question, and you're like, "Well, the 1982 lynching of the black man, the Ku Klux Klan was actually not the person to initiate force."
No, you're just getting nervous. You're just getting nervous because we're getting.
You never talk about the actual issue ever.
Let's go to so this question is an interesting one. James Bond, thanks for your question. Asked, they said police spend more time in violent areas, and thus isn't it more likely that they would find other crime in these violent areas?
Yes, it's been accounted for. That is definitely true. It is also literally the first thing these people account for when they're conducting these studies. Let's
give it. Well, and we'll give Eric and Alsop the last word.
I mean, no amount of sociology can talk away the fact that there's more dead bodies showing up in black neighborhoods.
No one's arguing
that simple.
It can explain it though.
Well, here's the thing. If there's more dead bodies showing up in your neighborhood because of homicide, then it's very obvious that more people in your neighborhood are going to go away to prison and get the death penalty.
You're just defending anti-intellectualism. Like, fuck the data,
it's not
fuck analysis.
Anti-intellectualism to lie. You're lying.
Intuition says,
if you go outside right now and you were to look across your city,
2 + 2 is 5.
The horizon is flat. All right. Now I'm just saying, I've been in airplanes where I've never seen curvature.
Hey, that's true.
And I've looked with my own eyes. Okay.
That's true.
I love how the people who are the flat Earth theorists, the people that are ideologues here that are doing this out of a religious belief, are people like you who, no matter what data I show you, you guys will never take the racialist position, no matter what data we show you. So what is the point of this? You have an ideology, you have a fixed religious belief in the equality of all races.
That we support
it's
with
a belief
data.
That's wrong. It's a belief that's wrong. The Chinese have already disproven it in their universities because they don't have these political pressures to give the system what it wants.
And show the studies.
The official ideology of the United States of America is anti-racism. They're laying Black Lives Matter banners.
Every question from
outside
a moderator
the US
goes the
embassy
same
in
way.
Asia. So give me a break. That's the official ideology of the U.S. government. You push it.
Every
Your
single
institutions
time you
push it,
talk, you go on the
and that's-
weirdest
that's
tangent.
that.
You know,
That's-
I've
I wanna
never
know-
been
I
killed
wanna
by a
know.
black man. Like, I don't know. The evidence is feeling pretty strong. Do black people murder anyone? I mean, I've never seen a murder by a
true.
black person.
I
Yeah,
think a
don't
really
know.
important question that Stryker needs to address is why do you believe that white people were created by Yakub?
True. Why?
Because because if Vaush here agrees with some Cato studies, which means he subscribes to all their ideologies, and the only people that you could support that or the side that you are supporting your arguments are fucking Nation of Islam
Well,
people.
I-
Does that
I
mean you
also-
buy into
I
their
believe
ideology
white
as
people
well?
are
I'm super
people,
curious about that.
Stryker.
I want to hear you talk about Yakub and all the
We're gonna- we
reasons
gotta
for
give-
white people.
we
if
to
these
really
corny-
do. We do.
If
have to
these
give-
corny, okay, one last second.
I want to give
These
you guys the
corny
last
little-
word, Stryker
yeah,
and James.
If these corny little gotchas are going to be the game, I could just bring up the fact that both of you are admitting that blacks are more violent and committing more crime,
No.
and say, well, that's actually my
Black
position.
people do
are
commit more
afraid-
crime in the
and-
United States than white people at the moment.
And
That's
are
not
afraid of
up
talking
Yeah,
about
there we
solutions.
go.
And are
So we
afraid
agree.
of talking
Good.
about solutions.
We've got to.
I think that's the most salient point here.
To be fair, I do have to give the last word to Stryker and James.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think you do little gotcha jokes about how many whites are killed by blacks. Well, the FBI data shows us that a white person is 27 times as likely to be killed by a black than a black is to be killed by a white. That is according to FBI data. So I mean,
Again, no analysis, just individual data points that you do not tie together with
Data
analysis.
is irrelevant.
Do
Data
you
is
need-
irrelevant.
Data is
Do you
irrelevant.
need-
That is so
is what you're saying,
fantastic,
is
Stryker.
what you're
I
saying.
Well,
appreciate
that's what
you
you're
being open
saying.
with
You're
this.
saying
This
that data
idea-
doesn't matter if it doesn't have some
No,
sociology.
you're not
ideology.
providing.
Adding
You're not
up 2 + 2
providing
equals
data.
5.
You're providing stats
Numbers-
out of context.
The statistics of black crime are on paper. They're well known.
What context minimizes the fact that whites are 27 times
Wait,
as
can
likely
I
to be killed by blacks?
One second.
Wait. Can I appeal to the moderator really
Hold on.
quickly?
I've got-
Wait, really
one
quickly,
second.
James.
Hold on.
Do you not feel that every time you ask a question, they take it to like pull out their little black book and start
Yeah, they got, like, the
reciting
little
the
dialogue
same
they wanna run
fucking
down.
argument? Can we actually like respond to the
Like-
questions the super chatters were asking?
Let's see. So what I have to do is I have to give Stryker and also the last word, and then we got to go to this next
I
question.
wonder if it'll be about the question.
Yeah, well,
So
and
the original,
this
the
idea that
original-
our
I'll read the original question.
Go
The
ahead.
original question. Were we on the? This wasn't on the AR-15s for Black Lives
Literally,
Matter, was it?
no one knows right now, James. You're gonna have to find it because these guys sure as fuck aren't responding to the question.
Yeah, well, according to you
the
guys,
idea
data
that
is
if we
irrelevant.
don't respond with the response you want, that our response is somehow invalid, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, that's
This is
not
a
how it works.
discussion.
We have the data, we have the crime rates, we have the stats, we have them broken down by race, and you guys just snark about it and just pretend it's not happening. It's not real. Like,
we
I
have
mean, it's just
1350.
ridiculous.
We're not owned. We're not owned. We have 1350.
But is
Seriously, yeah.
1350 real? Is it?
Is it? Now he's arguing for it.
Snarking about it doesn't mean that black people don't commit far more interracial crime than the reverse. So what are you laughing at?
I feel like you
I don't
literally came to
understand.
this debate and like you have a folder titled like research for debate and it's full of like rage comics right now. Like that's what you sound like, Stryker. Do you understand?
Right. I mean, you're not even addressing what we're saying.
this is
I mean,
just-
you're
it's just
making
child.
gay
You're not
movies.
addressing the super chat.
All right. Let's next. Jonathan Y. Wu. Let's see. Did you feel like you had the?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can
Go
give
ahead.
you
We're
the
fine.
last word if you feel like you didn't have it there because I know that was kind of an interchange.
Hey, go ahead. It's fine. Move on to the next one.
Jonathan Y. Wu, thanks for your question. Said, are Stryker and also uncomfortable that me and my Han Chinese ancestry are every bit as American as they are?
I don't really care. I mean, is that some gotcha for some like paleocon? I don't give a shit. I say good for the Chinese. The Han race is ascendant. I applaud them. It's a very consistent civilization. I think that the Chinese government is actually fighting for its own race and its own race's existence. And I think that's why they will eventually destroy America in an international conflict, whether passive, cold, or hot. And this man sending in that super chat will renounce his American citizenship and go live in a prosperous China. I mean, that's just how it is. I'm glad he has another country to go to. Okay.
Yeah, and
White
the type
people
of
don't have a place to go after this.
I
right.
thought we have all of Europe. I thought Europe was a
Yeah, and look at the demographics there.
Good. And then we'll do it to China too, baby. We'll import the third world into China
Yeah.
too. Nowhere
Good luck
will
with
be
that.
safe.
They're gonna eat you.
We'll find your great grandparents' fucking bedrooms and we'll import the third world into there too.
Hey.
Okay?
You said it. That's
The third
Great.
dream.
Rudyard
Mask off.
Kipling,
Let's-
Vaush
let's-
Kipling
Mask
over
off.
here.
They can't. But the funny thing is, they're so addled, they don't know I'm making a joke. They actually think that's what we believe. They can't actually tell.
Every comment you make is the nervous Wojak with the smiling mask. Like that's every stupid joke you make. So it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about like comics? It's like that's like the haha. He didn't know that I was pretending to be retarded. I mean, it's like all right.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got to move. Okay, I've got to move on. I'll give you guys the last word.
They do. They're admitting it. They think that's how like black and white it is. It's like a child's view of politics.
Well, if they look at the data point that they have.
Yeah, these guys are so stupid for taking it.
Their data point.
Come on.
Vaush bad, Destiny bad, frowny face. I have here this study.
You took me at my word. Ha ha ha.
No.
I feel like this is like a massive Turing test. Like people put a bunch of Markov chains together, and Stryker's entire personality was generated off of 4chan posts. He's like an amalgamation of every stupid fucking meme on
Destiny,
that fucking board.
Why do you keep doubling down on personal attacks and refuse?
This guy literally called both of us faggots multiple times, and we're the ones making the.
That wasn't a personal attack. Aren't you proud to be LGBT?
What are you talking about, dude? Are you serious?
Are you LGBT or not?
Go there. We've got a question from Insane Hermit. Says, do Destiny and Vaush not allow blacks to separate because they want continuous race war and exploiting of whitey?
This is what I mean. Like, these people's perceptions of our beliefs are fucking insane. What are you talking about?
Well, so the clear answer is I don't think that the combination of blacks and whites would lead to a perpetual race war. I mean, if black people and white people want to go off and like make their own little, like you can go move in with white friends in a house, or you can go move in with black friends in a house, or you can go to another country, I guess, if you want. But no, I don't think either of us are interested in enforcing some racial separation of like stores or properties or something like that. I don't think there's going to be a perpetual race wars as a result.
Wait, please, we can't do every 8-minute tangent.
I had the last word on that, so you can share.
Yeah, well, I have the last word actually.
Oh, sorry,
okay.
Vaush, go ahead.
Yeah, all I want to say is, people should be able to live with one. That's it. It's so simple. I don't want to force anyone together or anyone apart. I just don't want people to be able to discriminate based on race. It's very simple.
Next, just watch 124. We've only got maybe time for another one or two. I think one of you guys is on the East Coast, right? So we just watch 124. Thanks for your question. Said, Destiny, stop and frisk served as a deterrent, not an illegal gun confiscation program. That's why, quote, only about 750 guns, unquote, were found, but gun crime went down.
That's a really interesting question because we didn't get to talk about this. I had a study from 2017 called "To Stop and Frisk Deter Crime: Evidence from the Aftermath of Floyd v. City of New York." And interestingly enough, it didn't.
Gotcha. And Zephyr, let's see. Zephyr says, Stryker, don't talk about blacks wanting separation. We don't want that crap. Don't you dare try to speak for us. Stryker, do you?
I will give you this. I am just talking about black people I know that I talk to, historical black leaders, what they wanted. Marcus Garvey. You can look at Malcolm, the greatest black men in American history. Many of them agreed with my position on this. Okay, the Black Panther Party, for example. They were very, very skeptical of the Weather Underground, even though the Weather Underground, which is all Jewish and all liberals, white liberals, wealthy white liberals, and Jews, made up the Weather Underground. They invented the concept almost of white privilege. They had these struggle sessions and atoning for your privilege and things like that. The Black Panthers, before that, were aligned with the Young Patriot Organization, which was an unapologetically white working class movement of Southerners who used the Confederate flag. And you can find pictures online of Young Patriots who were unapologetic racialists, basically. They were Dixie nationalists with Black Panthers, and their flags are together. So black people and white people historically have come together with this point of view to fight the system together, okay? These guys, on the other hand, white liberals, they don't have any interaction with black people. I mean, maybe this is one of those, like, maybe a black exception, but black people don't like white liberals.
Should I go like make a meal during this?
When white liberals move into their neighborhoods, they understand that their neighborhood's about to get gentrified. When they see Whole Foods open up, they understand that means the rent is going to go up. So I'm just saying, like, let's talk to black people about this. This is an exception to the rule, but I noticed one thing. He didn't have any kind words for Destiny and Vaush. He just said, hey, you don't speak for me either, which is fine. I don't pretend to. They do.
I know. Wait. I don't give a fuck if
black people.
I don't give a fuck if black people agree with the arguments that I make, because I don't base the legitimacy of my arguments on a racialist perspective of subjective truth. I argue for what I argue because I think it's correct and because I think it's right.
These policies you support are going to impact black people.
Everyone. because I think my ethics are applicable.
If you
to
pull
everyone.
police out of the ghetto, black people will die by the hundreds. In
All right,
fact,
we're-
if
we're
I was an
moving- we're
unironic
moving
white
off right
supremacist,
now.
I would agree and amplify with you. Oh, you're going to pull police out of black neighborhoods, or
Wait, when did I
lessen
say
police,
that?
Police
Did I make
in
that
black
Just
argument?
talked about polling police at a
Aren't
black
you?
neighborhood.
Aren't
That's
you
not
an
what we're talking about.
anarchist?
Whoa,
You don't believe in
yeah,
dealing
Wait,
with
wait, was he an
police?
anarchist or a liberal? Which one, Stryker? Does he change like
Good
stance
question.
based on what
Good
you're fucking
question.
arguing with?
There's a lot of fluency there. So, are you an anarchist or a liberal, Vaush? Do you support defunding the police?
I mean, wait, is defunding the police the same as pulling police out of black neighborhoods?
Well, if the police have no money, who's going to police them?
I didn't say. Do you think defund means zero money? That would be abolish the
That's
police.
what the people protesting are saying.
That's
Yes,
what
we don't
defund
want
means.
police. We want to
Well, no,
that's an anarchist
abolish
position.
the police means zero
The
money.
anar-
Defund
the
the police
anarchist-
means take
the-
away their budgets by a
Right.
portion.
Well,
Right.
are the police going to do it as like a weekend volunteer thing if you defund them?
Are you
Like,
sure
what-
you're
what-
equipped to have that? Maybe this can be
Yeah,
the next
there you go. Okay.
conversation.
I don't
You
think
know,
you know
here
like
comes the
any of the
snark.
talking
Yeah.
points to anything having to do
Here
with
comes the
defund or abolish
snark. Here comes
police.
the snark. Okay.
Well, okay, so the actual response is, in case you're wondering, defund the police usually refers to allocating different portions of the police budget to other services, that things that the police
Okay.
should be involved in. So, for instance,
Right.
if you've got like a mentally ill guy walking down the street and screaming, it probably shouldn't be the police that are called in. It should probably be somebody specially equipped to deal with
All
like
right.
special.
Well, that's going to affect black
That's what
people.
defund the police means. Don't say, "Oh,
That's
right," because you
gonna-
didn't know that
that's gonna
5 seconds
affect
ago before I
black
explained it to you.
people's lives, and you see how the police now.
I know
they
what you're
have
responding to
Fer-
right
they
now. I
have
was
Fer-
explaining
blue
what it meant.
flu,
You
Ferguson
clearly didn't know. I
syndrome,
know you want to move on to the
where
next
the
point. so
murder
I don't-
rate goes sky high as
That's
soon as
good.
the police keep
Cool.
a hands-off position.
That's
And
great.
that's gonna
Good thing
affect
none of
black
us are
people.
talking about that. Cool.
Okay.
Next,
Glad we all agree with that.
Let's see. I'm trying to remember who's the original question for. Okay, so Stryker and also the original objection was to you guys. If you guys want to respond, you can.
Yeah, I would just like to make the point that when he says that he doesn't want Stryker or I speaking for black people, that's fine. Neither of us are claiming to. What we are proposing is a solution, though, that has been endorsed by black leaders in the past and would be preferential or would result in a better situation for blacks. And I would also make the point that this does not only apply to criminal justice, but this applies to economics as well. We saw the study recently of Amazon workplaces, and this was released that the more racially diverse an Amazon workplace
This is not true. I went over this data on stream. Everything you're about to say
Okay,
is completely
you
misinformed.
did your study about this, I'm sure.
Wamazon did its own study.
No,
It
I
has-
just
has a
no.
policy.
I just wait. No. I didn't do my own study. I just looked at theirs because
Right.
none of you read past the headline.
Amazon's internal data
Sure.
found that more diverse workplaces are less likely to unionize. And so if you're interested in the well-being of blacks and economic well-being as a part
He
of
isn't.
that, then right. Well, obviously.
He isn't.
Then
He wants to
one-
impose his
one
own
would
gay
not-
liberalism on other
Jesus
people.
Christ.
that
One
don't
would
Right.
want
not
it.
have
You're
the same
cutting off
politics.
liberalism.
Oh God.
as
He's
Amazon.
basically an imperialist, actually. He's
A gay imperialist.
U.S.
Liberal, gay imperialist liberal.
Yes.
Yep.
Am I
that's what you are.
Wait, have they called me Jewish this debate, or is that another debate?
I'm not calling you Jewish.
Okay,
but
you have- okay, I'm just
are
making sure.
fulfilling their neocon agenda.
Hey,
You
just
say,
so
I
just to
want
clear
to
it up,
impose my worldview, my European-oriented worldview, which is what liberalism is.
so I went
on
over this
people
because I
that
saw.
don't want it around the world.
You
That's
are-
what you
you
said,
are
and
so-
you don't care.
Just so you know, I just want you to
about
know
what they
when
want.
you
You don't
grandstand
care
like
what
that,
color
you
people-
come
you
off
don't care
as
what-
pathetic
you don't
as
care
any motherfucker
what-
who
you
fucking
don't
shit
care
posts
what
on polls.
you don't
okay?
care what people of color think
Oh
about
my God.
your
Let me know when this guy is
god-awful
done.
worldview. You
If
just
you
want
cared
them
what
to
people
live
of
in.
color think, you wouldn't be citing like incredibly niche positions inside their community. You think all black people are represented by the Nation of Islam? What a
You
stupid
think,
fucking
you think
point.
black?
Wait,
What do you think
one
black
sec.
people think of transgenderism? Other stupid niche. You want to talk niche issues? That's what
This
you
is-
guys.
well,
stand
he
for.
actually
Wait,
can't
we
stick
have
to a
to-
topic. Wait, I'm sorry,
Gotta
moderator,
give-
if I may. I just because out of the responsibility to the audience. So I didn't like do a study on that Amazon article. I just read the article, which Vincent James, who was the person who I saw that through, didn't bother to do. The racial diversity was one of 12 characteristics associated with being less likely to unionize, and one of the reasons that was posited is because Whole Foods with greater racial diversity tend to be in larger cities, which have larger amounts of racial diversity, and larger cities tended to have, you guessed it, higher minimum wages, which means that there was less of an economic incentive for those groups to unionize. In fact, a follow-up study that I looked at showed that racial minorities were actually more likely to push for unionization in many industries. So everything that he just said about that was completely wrong. Again, all I had to do was look like past the headline.
Why is
It was
it
Well,
really-
that's fine, but I
policy?
actually have a study. Hold on, because we've
I want to.
we-
There are a lot of points, so we
You're
gotta.
really lying about this.
Read it,
Yeah.
then come
Fine.
back.
We've put studies on a pedestal in this debate, and that's fair. So here is a study
The
from
YouTube
Stanford
videos.
University: Racial Diversity and Union Organizing in the U.S. 1999 through 2008. Quote from the introduction: Does racial diversity make it hard to form a union? Most work by industrial relations scholars: Sales and Strauss, 1953; Dunlop, 1958; labor sociologists: Nelson, 2001; Clausen, 2003; Fantasia and Voss, 2004; Lichtenstein, 2002, presumes that it does. So the body of work on unionization,
Sure, link it.
and
I'll take a look.
sociology.
I'll take a look.
backs up our position, which
Okay,
is
then-
that
then link it.
diversity.
That
hurts
disagrees with the
workers.
information that I have seen, but please do link it. I'd be interested.
Well, we have a
in reading
study.
it. Yeah, so please link it.
Next, thanks for, let's see.
Wait, actually, wait. I'm curious. Actually, wait. For what James just said, I'm really curious. Why were unions less likely to form?
People of different races have less in common and are thus less likely to create a union.
Yep.
Couldn't that just
reality.
be racism?
Wait,
to
okay, I'm just
explain?
curious. Well, because I thought it was funny because I just looked it up. It's funny you didn't read the rest of your abstract. So the study finds that more diverse establishments are less likely to see successful organizing attempts. Little evidence is found, however, that this is because workers are less interested in voting for unions. Instead, the organizers of more diverse units are more likely to give up before such elections are held. Furthermore, this higher
Why do they give up?
Wait,
Let's
let him
keep
finish.
reading. This higher quit rate can be explained best by considering that other organizations involved in the organizing drive. In particular, employers are more likely to be charged with unfair labor practices when the unit in question is more racially diverse. This effect persists when the study controls for heterogeneity among industries, unions, and regions. Crazy. So a more diverse workplace maybe doesn't find it necessary to unionize. That's insane.
That's what
that
I
your own
said.
fucking abstract, oh my God, you're smiling right now, but you're dying on the inside, James. It's
No,
okay,
no,
dog.
no,
I
what-
know that feeling. I've been there before. It happens every now and then. But
Hey,
They're
still link
always-
that study,
You know,
though.
what you're
Link that
doing,
study to
what
them.
you're doing is one, you're contradicting the body of work that has been done on the subject. Which, by
okay.
the way, there
Just
you can
reading
look
your
right there.
abstract, dog.
Right, and you can look at the body of work that supports that.
Maybe you should cite the body of work then instead of the abstract.
Link
that
it.
supports our
Well,
position.
well, it's not with the snark. Let 'em talk.
Secondly, that is an inference they're making based on the data they find, which, by the way, demonstrates that more diverse workplaces find it more difficult to unionize. And so they are
Because they
trying
don't
to
need to.
explain. No, they don't
What?
need to. You think the more diverse workplaces don't need to unionize?
Not as
Why?
much as that's what your abstract claims. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what your abstract claims. It says it's more likely
point-
to be charged. They're more likely to be charged with
The
unfair
relevant
labor
thing we're
practices.
debating here is that more diverse places have less union organizing.
But
Right.
well, no,
That's
you
the only thing
need to
we're-
learn whether it's
why.
because
That's
of
the
the
salient point.
diversity.
yeah.
We must move on to the next one. I am trying to remember who that one was for, that last one. I think it was for Stryker and Allsup. If you want the,
It's hard to tell sometimes, isn't it?
Short and pithy last word from you guys, you can, and then we'll go to this last one for the night.
Right. Okay. So Vaush would say that he said this. He said that the reason why there's less union organizing is because of racism. Well, let's pretend that's true. It's
I
still a
posited
reality.
that.
You have to. Okay, that's fine. But if you're an actual person that that actually engages with material reality, and when you put two races together in a tightly closed space,
Every
get
time.
along. maybe you should live in reality instead of living in your fucking fantasy world.
Well, the article that he
That's the
cited
reality.
did not support that argument.
I've got to
He's saying it's because he doesn't get along with blacks. He can't imagine anyone else can.
I've got to
Well,
give these
you
guys
know
a
what? I
last
bet I know
word.
more black people than you
That's
two
what the
do.
study finds.
You two
I mean,
together.
That's what they find is that these diversity causes problems in unionizing. So, I
No
mean,
more blacks than you do,
Next,
Destiny.
we must go to the next one. So sorry, folks. There are a lot of super chats we won't get to. Really, we tried to get through as many as we could. Dave Riley Media, last one, says, thanks for providing a platform for this debate. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. And thanks especially to the debaters.
Hey, you need a thanks, I think.
That's
I'm
nice
thanking
of
you.
you. But the debaters are the lifeblood of the channel. They make it fun. So we could not thank them enough. And so thanks, Dave. Then they asked, we need more discussion, or they said, why isn't anyone talking about Tony Martin's claim that Jews were overrepresented among slave owners in the U.S. and the slave trade?
Because it's
Yeah,
not
and they're
true. I
not-
specifically looked at a debunk of this. That person was a fucking nutter. No, Jews are not overrepresented in the slave ownership.
That
in
was
this
a black
country.
scholar that did
It
that.
I don't.
Black
Fair.
scholars can be nutters. What do you?
Yeah, what the
Yeah,
fuck? Are you saying only white people can
only
be crazy?
Jewish and white liberal scholars are right.
Are you
Sure,
saying?
okay.
Wait, are you saying only white people can be nutters? That's very anti-white of you, my friend. No, I
No,
would argue
I'm
everyone
saying
is
that-
capable of being a fucking
I'm
nutter.
saying that there's institutional incentives.
Listen,
to
all
disprove
Sup and
that
Stryker will
because-
mauld. I've gone over the data. It's
because
complicated, but
the-
it's literally just dishonesty. Like he just
Okay.
lied in the
White
data.
people were also enslaved by Jews in the Ottoman Empire, who operated out of Salonika.
1,000
And we have plenty of data
Oh my
on
God,
that.
we're
including
jumping all over
Jewish-
the place.
actually,
now. Holy
1500
shit.
through 1900.
Actually, a white
Yes.
person was once brutalized by African men in
How many was
623
it,
in
James?
the Roman Empire.
Anywhere from 5 to 10 million slaves taken by the Ottomans
There you go.
along the
What the
Slavic route.
fuck
way
does that have to do with
Netherlands?
anything?
I
It's
love
about
that
the
fallback
oppression of
response.
whites.
Well,
Our
yeah, the
arc-
thing is that the Ottoman Empire is like very closely tied to the current U.S. justice system in the United States, as can be seen by
Ah,
the
yes.
Supreme
The
Court.
judges came
Well, they
over.
say the Ottoman
We
Empire.
are
is-
we're
discussing
talking about this
slavery
question.
in this question.
We're talking about
discussing
Jewish rule
slavery.
and slavery.
No, we weren't. We were talking about Jewish slavery with regards to the percentage they
Yes,
made up
and
of
I brought
American
up that Jews
slavers,
also enslaved white people.
which is
in Spain,
which
and
has
in the Ottoman
nothing
Empire.
to do with the claim made.
It's very relevant. Jews
It
and
is
slavers,
literally
you're
nothing
disputing
to do
that.
with
I
the
will
claim
show
made.
you a pattern of
I
Jews
probably
internationally running the slave trade from the Dutch
hold
East
on a
Indies
second.
to.
I should not have read this question because it's really not about anything close to the debate topic. So that was my fault. Want to say, with that, we will wrap up. Want to say, folks, thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. We really do hope you feel welcome, no matter what walk of life you come from. That's the purpose of this channel. We want to both give a platform to people from all walks of life, but also welcome the audience in terms of people from all walks of life. And so we are excited as Sargon will return. He'll be debating Brenton. That's sometime next week. And so hopefully we'll see you for that. Hit a subscribe, click, give the old subscribe or click if you want a reminder of that one, as that's going to be a good one. And so want to say one last thanks so much to Destiny, Vaush, Striker, and Allsup for being with us tonight. That was a wild one.
Yeah,
good time as always.
The other guys would have
Good
prepared for the
times.
actual debate material, but
Yeah.
this was a fun screaming match otherwise.
My main problem
Boo-hoo.
is that it's infinitely easier to discuss these issues like absent these perspectives. I have a feeling that people like Stryker and Allsup have no actual interest in examining any of these topics of discussion and are more interested in reciting their like stat lists and their
You virtue
like,
signal
pre-baked
to other white
arguments.
liberals. All right, you got it through.
That as I said, so that what
You're
he
a
just
good
said right there
person,
had
Captain
nothing to
America.
do with what I
You're a
just
good
said.
person, Captain
But he has a very,
America.
it's like a NPC in a video game. He has a very small list of pre-recorded responses that he defers to when he's confused or upset, which is very.
No,
Well,
I
you
mean,
have, like,
look, I think this is a good synopsis, a good encapsulation of tonight's experience, which is a lot of snark, a lot of personal attack, but not a lot of willingness to discuss solutions. And so even if one were to concede, even if
This
one
is
were
why
to
white liberals
concede
are a problem.
their supposition that there is widespread bias in the criminal justice system against blacks, which is debatable, of course. You then need to discuss what the solution to that would be.
Right.
Again, this is like standing by the side of your car on the highway if your tire is blown up, and then just standing there frozen, not being willing to discuss what to do next. Like, we can't change the tire. That's not part of the discussion. No.
Isn't Destiny the one that's always talking about, we need solutions? What about the solutions? How are you going to fix
Because
it?
the problem is, it's like our tire has gone flat on the side of the road, and like
He
three of us
changes
are like, we need to
opinion
change
depending
the
on the
tire,
context.
and one of you
That's
guys
what
is like,
it
well,
is,
actually, I think the engine fell out of the car, and you can't come to an agreement on what the problem even is.
And you see,
Right
you
now,
can
the debate
see
is
the
what's
engine
wrong with
right
the
there
car.
in the bed, but they're like,
the debate
I
right
don't know.
now is what is wrong with the car, not how do we fix the problem with the car.
You have to identify what the problem
not
is
capable
first.
of understanding the difference. I think the biggest mistake that me and Vaush made is really funny because we had a conversation like 2 weeks ago where we were like in preparing for this, because it's like this is like a pretty boring one-sided debate. Like there's like widespread consensus that black people face discrimination even when you control for all other factors. And we were trying to think of like, well, what angle of attack are they going to go? And I think we generally agree that they were probably going to see the argument immediately and try to move to this culture argument, which is like half true. I wish we would have recorded that conversation so we could have released it alongside this debate to show how hilariously fucking predictable you two intellectually bankrupt dipshits are.
So you guys
Again,
are more predictable. You're saying
we did
Yeah.
over prepare. I did over prepare. That's on
you got
me.
a
That's
can
my
of
fault.
arguments, and you just refuse to interpret or engage with any of our data. You just ignore it. You snark, and then you go back to repeating your own 5 or 6 talking points. And that's
Says the
about
guy that's literally
That's
reading
about
off a
it.
fucking
That's
PDF
about
about
it.
fucking Goldstein and
That's
whatever other
about it.
Jewish bullshit
Right.
you're bringing
Yeah.
up.
Right.
Yeah, PDFs are cool when we do it, but not when you do it. Stats are fine when we do
We
it, but
do
not when you do it.
studies.
Studies are
Right, there you
fine
go.
when we do it, but not when you do it. By the way, you're stupid. By the way, you're dumb. By the way,
Actually,
you're retarded.
I'm going to
We
say
understand
the
how you guys
studies on
debate.
both sides were done. I especially
Show
like the
me
one
a
you tried to
study
read
that
the
Sunday
abstract off of the
follows
disagree
Saturday.
with your
Show
point.
me a study that Washington D.C. is the capital of America. Show me a study. Show me the data. Blah blah blah. You can't find
You're
any first
offended
principles.
at the idea
That's
of
why.
like backing
That's
up
why.
your arguments.
That's why if we debate with black people, they will see and not have these dumb, pedantic, disingenuous little ways of avoiding the actual issue.
That's what
you guys are here to do. You're here to avoid the issue and keep the pressure on whitey.
I'll cede my time after this.
because you're virtue signaling to other white people.
Wait, I'll cede, if I may, because I defer again. I'll cede my time after this. I just want to say, you two are at your best alone or with other people who agree with you, because it is painfully obvious who actually has a better understanding of these issues when you come into conflict with people who disagree with you. This is the reason why, and I guarantee you this is going to happen, you're going to be blocking a fuckload of people on social media afterwards who are going to be ribbing you for getting owned by a bunch of degenerate fucking liberal whatevers, okay?
We don't have social media. We don't
I
have
strongly
mainstream social media because we're
suggest
actually
you stick to your
I
own
have-
circles.
The only reason I block someone on social media is because people in the Antifa sphere of things, i.e. your sphere, will just
I thought I was a
mass
liberal.
report me. Yeah, you are. Antifa is a liberal organization at this
Okay.
point. You know what the Iron Front symbol means? One of them is anti-communism. You didn't know that? The 3 arrows?
I don't even
Look
know.
into it. Look
Okay.
into that. Yeah, you don't even know what that is. Sure.
I
So
don't.
the point
Wait, what
is
are you
that
referring
like
to?
you guys have a little weird group of like 14-year-olds that watch people play video games on the internet. They're gonna do whatever you say. But the point is that it doesn't mean you're right. Okay, we have the truth on our side, and that's
As
why we
opposed to
want this
your
debate.
audiences that
Period.
only make up the best of the genetic
Hey,
stock
this is the
in the Western
six-figure
world.
salary.
What are you, some kind of
5'11"
Nietzschean or something now,
Chad.
Destiny?
We must.
What are you, some kind
we
of survival of the fittest Nietzschean,
definitely
Destiny?
want
Because I
to-
doubt
I
you'd
just
win
think
that
it
one.
Definitely.
I just think it's funny.
We to let everybody go and have the rest of their night. We will we'll say goodbye. So thanks so much, folks. It's been a wild one, and also forgot to mention we are excited as for the first time Christy Winters will be here this Friday debating feminism. That should be interesting. And then tomorrow, Erica and I will co-mod a debate on creationist genetics. So that should be interesting. And so with that, I want to say thanks to our guests, though. It's always a wild one. So thanks. They are linked in the description, folks, if you want to hear more, and keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. Take care, everybody. Thanks, guys. That was crazy.
I love you,
Wow.
James. I hope you know that, James. I love you. You're not paid enough for what you do.
That's nice
yeah,
of you.
feel free to edit out some. I didn't mean Kuhn in that context. Obviously, it was in a
I think
specific context.
Yeah, I didn't realize it until after. I think you were trying to do the,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes people, usually like conservatives will say that
Racial
on the-
slurs. True.
From
That's
time to
all-
time.
I think I get. Well, I mean, at first I thought I was like pissed because I thought you were.
No.
But I think you were trying to say it kind of like, what's that? Candace Owens. She says
Right.
Uncle Tom is the
Right.
word he's looking for. Yes.
that she.
Right. That's how that's what I was saying. Like,
I
that's
have
how
said Uncle
they
Tom many times on
perceive
my channel.
people, certain people that black people don't follow their ideology, and that's what I was meaning.
Okay, well, listen, it's been fun. Both you guys are dumb as fuck. I'm glad we wasted our time researching for this because holy shit, this was disappointing. So,
Destiny,
yeah.
you are 4'2" and a pedophile. So
Yes.
Not
Good to
4
see
foot
you.
two,
So is
not
Vaush.
a pedophile.
Actually,
It sounds like you're
Vaush.
projecting quite a bit there,
Hey,
James.
Mr.
So have fun,
Hands.
buddy.
I heard
Whoa, I'm
Mr.
not
Hands is on the
4'2".
call.
Should probably
Whoa!
probably end this.
All right.
Good child
Fine,
molesters.
guys.
The
Better stay ahead of
moralistic
the
child
brown hair.
molesters. All right.
Good luck doing damage control tonight for the both of you, okay?
All right. That went about as well as it could have. Oh, God. I over-prepared for this so fucking hard. How hard can you over-prepare? Here, I'm going to call Destiny real quick. We got to do the post.
Oh, well, that was dumber than even I thought it would be. No, I think it was about the level I thought it would be. No, I think it was a little dumber than I thought
It was a
would be.
little worse than I expected. I at least over-prepared. I don't know. I was
I thought
fussing
at
over
least
my
they were
job.
going to try to like have like some like bad study or some bad instead of literally just like, oh well, here's the crime stats. Black people do commit more crime.
It's
Like, okay,
1350,
it's not
baby.
really what we're targeting. Yeah.
Well, I
Holy shit.
appreciate you signing up for the 2v2 with me. Enoch was very smart to not involve himself in this, I think.
Yeah. I wonder if I don't like to talk about it a lot just because it's boring, but sometimes I sincerely wonder if people don't understand the difference between like one or two numbers versus like an actual study that contextualizes data. Like the idea that you could just cite like two numbers and say, oh, well, here's like a causal inference. Like, oh, dude, you just solved like 99% of the hard work in all of like academia. Congratulations. Like, you're so smart. Like, I don't know. It's so fucking stupid.
Well, in a really relativist way, it makes sense, right? To hold the positions that we do are like liberal or socialist positions. We generally have to base it off like data analysis, but to believe the things they have to believe, they have to not understand data analysis. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? Like,
I guess
otherwise
it
they
logically
couldn't.
follows then that those types of people would sort themselves into those baskets. Yeah.
Yeah, or vice versa.
Yeah, actually, I guess that's true because like my core values, I don't think have changed much over the past 10 years. It's usually just been like more data collecting is kind of like led me to the position I'm at today. It's not like I had some massive awakening where it's like, oh, all of a sudden I love women and I love black people. But it's more just like I've always felt that way. I just had like bad data, I guess, early in my life, and you just collect more, you read more, and eventually you get to some position, I guess. But...
Do you enjoy debating these Nazi types? Because I find that I'm getting really, really bored of them.
It's kind of fun, but the only problem is that when you do it 2-on-2, I want to scream over everybody, and I have to be careful not to scream over you sometimes.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry if I talked to you. By the way, listen, I was just.
Yeah, that was fine. But
very
yeah, I
excited.
don't know. I mean, in some ways, it's kind of funny. I think that at the end of the day, the biggest like defeat for these types of people is you don't want to look bad. People don't care if they're right or wrong. People don't care if they're racist or not racist, especially these guys. You just don't want to look like you're stupid. And like I think there are a couple times where I hope that we can like demonstrate like these guys like look really dumb because people don't care if they feel like you're calling them racist. racist. They don't care if they feel like, they might disagree with some academia bullshit, but nobody wants to feel stupid at the end of the day. And you identify with the content creators that you watch. And if you feel like your guy has been like made to look like an idiot, then you kind of feel like an idiot. And I found that at least in the emails that I get, that's usually what causes people to kind of like move positions. It's like, oh, well, I watched this guy and I don't know, man, when he talked to you, he looked really stupid. And I don't know, it made me feel uncomfortable. So.
With them. That's all it is. That's all they do. It's all they know. Because right now there are probably hundreds of people on poll that are like co-posting right now, and the people who like think that we lost are screaming about how we're pedophile faggots, and the people who think that we won are talking about how like Stryker looked like a retard or whatever. But that's it. That's like that's the limit of the discussion from like beginning to end.
I think. I hate to reveal what the type of material I like to read. One, because it makes my dumbass fans post more, and then two, it might dissuade somebody else from it. But usually when you go on to especially reading the politics boards after this, is that usually what you find is you won't usually find praise for your end, but you'll find a bunch of people that start posting like, fuck, like Allsip was like a huge moron in this debate. Why didn't he prepare? Like these guys acted like dipshits. Like, oh God, like they're a bad representation, paid opposite. Those are usually, because they're never going to say nice things about you, but it's funny when they start ragging on their own dudes because they realize how horrible the fucking showing was.
That's step one, really right? Funny. I mean, and then hopefully a couple of them move over, because I do really feel bad for whoever person, whose thought processes are degenerate enough that they can watch that and think like, yeah, dude, Stryker was owning it. Damn, fuck those liberals.
Well, liberal anarchists into whatever.
I don't defend
they didn't
try
to pin my ideology on, but you had like 6 different ones in that debate.
Very
fluid.
Well, listen, hey, I bristle when I'm called a liberal, okay? I try not to defend the anarchist positions that much anymore. I don't think there's much material benefit to be had from, like, throwing forward the most aggressively radical arguments first. You kind of have to build them up to that, right? Like, if you get people on the idea that wage labor is in some way, shape, or form theft, like, you can build them up past that point, but you have to start there. You can't open with the really far shit.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway.
Well, hey, buddy, I appreciate the conversation.
A brief once-a-year departure from Twitch, because I will never be allowed back on that platform. Anyway, have a wonderful stream and night, and thank you again.
Be careful. I can't wait to fight with you over some class reductionism shit in the future.
Have fun. I'm very anti-class. Have you seen... Wait, are you aware of Rising, by, the way? With Crystal Ball and Sagar?
Oh, God. I've heard. I tried to look into a few things. It looks so fucking horrible.
Ooh, it's really, really bad. They're legit just scooping up, like, burnt out, like, Bernie supporters and trying to push them into the far right. It's crazy. Anyway, good luck.
Yeah, man. Populism is a hell of a drug. You can go left or right with that.
That's true. Be well.
All right. Have fun. Bye.
Cool. All right. How'd that go? I think that went pretty well. How well did that go? Let me think. Hold on. They're asking me to post ooh. There. I have posted ooh. Now they know. Okay, there we go. I think that went pretty well. I think I responded to that about as well as possible. Yeah, we hit 12,000 viewers there. 12,000 viewers, which was about what Destiny got. But of course, I stream on YouTube, and he doesn't. So I'm going to have a home field advantage there. That's easily a record. That's easily a record. Like, that's not even close to not being a record. Yeah. Okay, that was my... Whew. And you know what? I want to make it official right now. And right now, with all the people who are watching, I want to make this very well known. Still over 10,000, okay? I am so done debating Nazis. I'm so bored. I'm so fucking bored of debating Nazis. It's so boring. Every single time. Every time. They do not respond to the things that are said. They don't engage. They just have their little script about no matter what you say to them, it's always the same. Well, I think it's funny, you can say that, but when you really look at it, white people are actually under attack, our civilization is crumbling. Like, every single time, it is the same disconnected, Live Post. Oh, hey, Live Posting, yeah, Sartor, yeah, anti-Semitic Jew. It's the same thing every time. It's really, really boring. And I understand that there are some fantastic, like, blood sports moments to be had, within regards with the debates with Nazis, but I'm just bored, honestly. I would rather debate, like, MAGA hats and conservatives. I'd rather debate TikTok conservatives. I'd rather debate Democrat, like, moderate liberals. I'd rather debate dumbfuck MGTOW types. I'd rather debate anyone than these these lunatic, completely divorced from reality, they sneer at the concept of backing up their arguments, you know? Yeah, it's just really boring for me. So I'm going to try to move away. I'm gonna try to move away from that, I think. And I think the channel will be stronger for it, frankly. Would you rather debate vegans? Vegans are still one tier below the Nazis, okay? No. No. All right. Anyway, oh yeah, Hyena posted some memes. All right. You fucking degens. Oh, hey, Pseudosia. Hey, it's me! Yeah, we got for a brief moment. For a brief, glorious moment. We got it, baby.